request I made months ago. So I'd like to see that happen. That should help. And to provide better context for the news service, I will now begin to attend executive sessions, something I am entitled to do but haven't done in the past. At any rate, thank you, everyone, and we should all be celebrating this month, the First Amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Scheck. I'll call up Margaret Bradley. Good evening and welcome to City Council.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Can they hear her okay with the microphone where it is?
I can move.
No, I think you're okay. Thank you.
My name is Margaret Bradley, also known as Mitch. I've been here 18 years. Love your town, our town. This petition is because a number of me and my friends, neighbors, have become a little upset about people parking their RVs, trailers, you big, you not too small, you big, etc., on the streets for long periods of time. I know there's an ordinance. It's often not followed. I drove around this town for about 40 minutes, and I know I didn't hit all the town on a Tuesday afternoon, and there were 24 trailers. I don't know how long they've been there, but some of them had leaves on them, so kind of gives you an idea, doesn't it? Anyway, I want to say that most people in this town appear to be very responsible. I didn't, there were trailers at the side of the house, in the back, blah, blah, blah. And people do take care of them, but some people don't. And this is a safety issue. They're very big. And not only is it a safety issue, it's a parking issue. So I'm asking that this petition be given to the Parking Commission. That's what I would like. Sorry, reading.
It's okay.
Those, so substantial narrowing the streets. Sometimes, of course, parking itself is at a premium. We all know that. So when you take up, as one of my neighbors did, 60 feet of the street, that's a lot. And in this issue, it was also a real serious safety problem. So my petition asks that, I just wanted to say, I'm an old lady, 80 years old, got a bad back, walking around was not simple for me to get a petition. But of the around 25 people I asked, 3 people said, no, I won't sign. I never sign anything. So not much you can do about that, is there? So basically people are pretty much in favor of it. I hope the city council will pass this on to the parking commission. And I'm basically asking not to change our ordinance, except to say we need to put something in there that makes sure they get moved after 72 hours. Give them 72 hours. You gotta load and unload. Makes sense. But they need to be moved. And I realize our police force just doesn't have police to go around and deal with, has this person been here 3 days or hasn't here, I understand that. But something definitely needs to be done. Maybe it's fine, no. That's up to them, not me. So do I give this to her?
Yes, go ahead and let Amanda. Thank you for taking the time to come in. And Amanda, I'm going to ask that you make sure it gets to the right places and let staff follow up on that in the commission.
Can I add one thing to that? Would you include your list of 24 sites that you found or 24 violators that you found and include them?
I didn't write it down.
Okay.
We'll have some.
And I honestly can't dust underneath.
Amanda, you can grab that. Yeah.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move forward. We have an invited presentation by on the Polk County Regional Homeless Prevention Project by Polk County Commissioner Jeremy Gordon and Brent DeMoe, the Polk County Family and Community Outlet at a place for them to sit, to make accommodations. Gentlemen, welcome to the Independent City Council. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you, Mayor, so much for having us, and thank you, Council, for your partnership and your engagement in this issue. I'm here to talk briefly about House Bill 4123 and our subsequent partnership to address homelessness in our rural communities. And Brent will speak a bit about the work already underway and some hopes and dreams and good things that are happening. So the intent of House Bill 4123, and I apologize if this has already been conveyed to you. I'm not sure what you've discussed yet, but we do want to leave time for questions. So I'll try to be brief. But the intent of the House bill is to encourage cities and counties to work together to address homelessness in their communities in ways that resonate with their communities. Too often, resources from HUD, from state agencies get filtered into the big metro areas, the Salems, and they don't get to rural areas, but we know there are issues in rural areas. I live in Falls City, and my work in this area kind of started when I served as mayor in Falls City. We have very high rate in youth homelessness. 25% of the youth in Falls City are experiencing some form of homelessness. So I've been sort of leaning into this issue for a while. And when the legislative concept first came across my desk, it was forwarded to me by a city manager in the area. And I talked to Brent about it. And he said, well, why don't you get the managers and mayors in a room and see if they want to work on it? Well, we did that, discussed whether or not we wanted to put our name in the hat to be chosen as one of the pilots. And we had wonderful conversations. I was excited as a new commissioner that there was so much enthusiasm and desire to address something that was acute in our communities. And so we wrote an application, a letter of intent, and we were chosen. So our partnership includes the City of Independence, Polk County, Falls City, Willamina, Dallas, Monmouth, Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, and Community Action Agency. So it's a pretty wide berth of partnerships, and we intentionally left out West Salem for a number of reasons. Salem has a pretty large focus right now and has been dealing with this issue for a while. And the nature of rural homelessness and how it manifests and the solutions might be different. So why don't we focus our efforts on a rural prevention model? Some of the deliverables of the bill that we're required to deliver to the state, and the county is in contract with the state directly. One is to sign a intergovernmental agreement, an IGA, which we've done. It enjoyed overwhelming support across jurisdictions. Another is to establish an advisory board with one member from each part. In process. It'll probably be a mixture of city managers and elected officials, which is great. And by the way, that advisory board will have its own set of bylaws. Those meetings will be public, they'll be posted, anybody can attend, and I encourage all of you to attend at some point, even though you will likely select one person to be a representative. Another deliverable is to create a 5-year strategic plan. That sounds simple, complex, daunting, everything. As you know, homelessness does not have one single cause. It doesn't have one single solution. It's incredibly complex. We're not going to fix all the macroeconomic issues facing the country, but we are going to move the needle in rural Polk County. I'm determined to do so, and I can feel the enthusiasm to do so from partners as well. The 5-year strategic plan will identify gaps in our community's housing and homelessness services. It'll identify opportunities for coordination of existing services, make those services more efficiently distributed across the geographic area of our partnership, from Grand Ronde to Independence, and also to figure out ways we can sustain the office, assuming that we think it's doing good work. And then there are also reporting requirements to the state legislature, OHCS, and other agencies of the state. That's about it. So when I did some advocacy during the legislative concept phase, and all of the pilots wanted to ensure that we weren't tied to install certain solutions in our communities determined by the state of Oregon and other larger entities. We wanted to address this in ways that resonated with us, like I mentioned earlier. So there's quite a bit of freedom in this money. The amount, as you know, is $1 million that needs to be expended within 2 years. And like I said, we have a lot of latitude to do good work here. Other pilot communities in Oregon, other counties involved: Benton County, Coos County, Deschutes County, Hood River, Wasco, Sherman, Lincoln, Tillamook, Umatilla. You can tell that there's a wide berth of rural counties, geographic diversity, And you might notice that Marion County's not in there, Multnoma's not in there, Clackamas. They have their own direct funding for this sort of work. We don't get that kind of funding, but now we do. We have a chance to make a case to continue this funding. The first thing we did before we even convened the advisory board meetings, which we hope the first one will be convened in October, but Brent's office, thanks to Brent DeMoe and Amber Kramer, who's here today, convened a series of community meetings to hear perspective from any agency, any sector, any individual who interfaces with a homeless population in Polk County. So I'd like to just end my bit with some takeaways from those meetings, then I'll hand it over to Brent. We heard from law enforcement, so the Sheriff's Office, Monmouth and Independence Police, Dallas Police, Tribal Police, and the Willamette Code Enforcement Officer. And they shared with us what they were seeing in their communities. A lot of RV, congregate parking, a lot of calls, EMS calls, not necessarily crimes being committed, but sort of nuisance calls. And they want some solutions. They want to be able to direct folks to the right places. So they're engaged. We heard from local hospitals. We heard from city and county staff. We heard from service providers and nonprofit agencies. And what we've gleaned from that is that over 90% of those experiencing homelessness currently in rural Polk County are either from here or have ties here. They might be working, they might have kids in school, they might be on parole and probation here. Lots of folks existing right now in Polk County experiencing this. And I also wanted to mention that other pilot communities across the state are starting their homelessness response system from scratch. Our project in rural Polk County is pretty well positioned, I think, to make significant impacts addressing homelessness and prevention, not only because of the buy-in from leadership at all levels already established, but because of the existing services and partnerships that we have in place, largely thanks to the Family and Community Outreach Department at the county. And Brent will talk more about that, but his office is not a typical county office. You don't see them in other counties. An office that co-locates other service providers and agencies makes it very easy for clients to come in and get the help they need. It's a really tough navigation nightmare to get services when you need help, and FCO makes it very easy for people. Some other takeaways, we heard from the McKinney Bento liaisons in our school districts. These are the folks tasked with helping out homeless kiddos in our school districts. We found that over 207 students are currently experiencing homelessness in rural Polk County. That does not include West Salem. I was horrified by that. And that's probably an undercount by 30 to 40%. A lot of kids don't want to talk about it. They're not reaching all the kids because of stigma, because of fear, because of systems trauma. They've tried to get help and have been denied, et cetera. Like I said, RV camping is an ongoing issue throughout rural Polk County. Homeless people in Polk County are generally not committing crimes, like I mentioned. Transportation is a huge barrier in rural communities, and it's a persistent and challenging barrier for folks trying to seek services, get to jobs, things like that. Safe housing is not available for many families experiencing homelessness. And many individuals and families experiencing homelessness do not identify as homeless. With those 207 kids, it wouldn't make 207 beds in the middle of the county. I just don't think they would flock to that service. So we need to find ways to meet people where they're at, to communicate with them in ways that resonate with them, and to talk about it in ways that make sense for us as well. So we learned a lot more than that. I just kind of listed some highlights, but I'm hoping Brent will take over and talk about the good stuff he's doing.
What if I don't take over?
And I'll have the council.
Good evening, welcome.
Good to see you all again. Brent Paulimo. I'm the director of the Family and Community Outreach Department in Polk County. And I think it's important to tell you guys, I was in Polk County since second grade, went to Paradale. I'm a graduate there. I lived a few years on the bad side of the bridge, but I've been working for Polk County. This is my 14th year doing this type of social service work for the county. So I've seen the changes. I've seen the ebb and flow. I've seen the tide sort of change on how social services work. And mostly I've seen a lot of systems that maybe need some improvement. And that's kind of what I'm going to focus on right now today. So Jeremy kind of explained some of the big picture stuff. I'm more of a brass tacks kind of guy. I want to get right down to, so what are you going to do, Brent? Or what have you already done? So we really haven't expended any of that $1 million yet, because we want to wait until we have that committee together to start looking at what different jurisdictions want to do to advise the county on how to do that. But we did recognize some pretty low-hanging fruit immediately. So I want you guys to picture in your mind any man, any woman, or any family that you ever know that you either have seen on a street or that they are homeless. And all of the things that we hear all the time is, you know, that person should get a job. That person should just go get a housing voucher. That's what poor people do. They get a voucher. Those people should get connected with a shelter. Those people should just do these types of things. So think about those people for a minute. And on any given day, they may have a contact with law enforcement, with code enforcement, with a business, with a citizen, possibly somebody at a school district, maybe a church member or a church program, or any program from the county or another social service agency. What we have realized in partnership these last few months, none of those people talk to each other. None of those people who have a contact point with a family who's in need do any sort of getting together and really staffing that case and finding out who's doing what. So we started doing that without spending any money yet. We started doing that about a month ago. And we have seen a real change. Our plan with some of this money to begin with is we are going to hire 2 full-time intensive case managers whose job it is to answer the phone when Chief Mason calls and says, hey, this is what we're experiencing. Or when there's a citizen like the young lady who's 80, who just testified here before, hey, I've seen this trailer here. It's been here for 3 weeks. I wonder what I can do about that. Well, you're going to be able to call us and we're going to be able to find out what's going on. When you tell somebody just go get a housing voucher or go to the employment department, how are they going to get there? How are they going to take a shower? How are they going to get cleaned up? That's where we're going to come in. Right now, if somebody needs a ride to the housing authority, what transportation system is in place for that person to get door to door? Our team will be able to do that. We'll be able to pick somebody up and say, hey, do you have SNAP benefits? Are you getting your food stamps and things like that? Let's go get you signed up for that. What we've really seen start to move the needle, and it's only been a month or so, is the case management part, finding out who that person is, what other systems or agencies are they working with. We already developed a release of information for everybody we work with that we can talk to every other agency that exists to find out how we can help them the most. So the Housing Authority, Department of Human Services, Family and Community Outreach, Community Action Agency, the Police Department, Code Enforcement, City Management, everybody can start working on who is working with this person and is anybody providing case management and the correct kinds of services. This hasn't happened very often in rural parts of Oregon, so we're kind of trying it out, but we've already seen some good results in folks that we've worked with both in Dallas, Monmouth, and Independence of just having somebody talking to somebody and finding out all the information and keeping it in one spot and then talking to other partners as well. So that's one of the first things that is going to be on the do side of what we do, because no other agency is providing that level of intense case management, that cross-checking and staffing with other agencies who might work with the family that's at risk or a person, individual, or a family experiencing homelessness. That's what I'm most excited about. Other things that I think you guys should know about this effort, there's going to be a huge focus on prevention. If we are working with families and individuals before things get awful, we have so much of a better chance of helping them, right? So in the last month, the Resource Center, through funding and partnerships all across the board, they did over $40,000 of rental assistance just in rural Polk County, not counting West Salem. That's just 1 month. You guys know that we have the Resource Center Annex in Monmouth. I talked about it a couple months ago with y'all. We are so busy there, we're expanding it. And so the district is allowing us to use the second portable building there. And we're going to have more staff outstationed there, more resources, more dollars, and even a couple of other nonprofits that want to have another staff person there that can not only work with actual homeless folks in this area, but anybody who's at risk. And then you know that hopefully in a year from now, the new building that we're going to be building for my department on the S-curves, which I've heard rumors that it's a giant homeless shelter. I'm here to tell you there will be no shelter services at all. This is just our department outgrowing our space in Dallas, and also recognizing most of the folks we serve are not from Dallas. So our department is going to have a new building on the S-curves. We're going to co-locate everything that we do, a couple of other county services, and also some other nonprofits in the area that serve families will be there too. But anyone who thinks there's going to be shelter services there, that's a bad rumor. I mentioned focusing on prevention. We know that we're going to have to front load in the first year. We have people who are living on the street in Polk County. We need to be concentrating and working with those folks to find what the solution is, whether that's a program somewhere else, whether it's a shelter program where they exist. Currently, there's very few shelter options in Polk County, but we are going to maintain a list of every person that we know in all of rural Polk County who is experiencing homeless, who is at risk, and who's doing what with them, all in one database that we have already created. Other things that Commissioner Gordon mentioned about this 5-year strategic plan. So by about May of next year, we're going to have a strategic plan that will be influenced and input given from folks like you, community members, citizens, and other municipalities. So we can have a plan that works for rural Polk County, one that we designed ourselves, one that the state didn't tell us, or that Portland didn't tell us. It was what we decided that we think might work, how to spend that money and how to make sure that our areas aren't looking like some of the urban areas who didn't address this 20 years ago in a timely fashion. There is a ton more that we can talk about this. We want to be respectful of your time. Also wanted to make sure that you knew Commissioner Gordon, myself, the teams that are working on this, we're available to you anytime you want, individually or as a group, whether it's coffee, whatever you want to do. If you have questions, concerns, we want to hear about them. And if you have time for questions, Mayor.
I think we do, and I really appreciate your presentation. And are there councils who have questions for our presenters?
I do.
Please do, Councilor Roden.
So I heard all that you were saying, but nowhere did I hear anywhere where you have any plans to deal with what is causing chronic homelessness. The cause of chronic homelessness is drug abuse and mental health issues. Wouldn't it be wise just to give all that money to mental health and drug prevention services instead of delegating it like you are intending? Because nowhere in your plan have I heard anything about how are we going to curb chronic homelessness with the mental health and the drug abuse.
First of all, the plan is yet to be written. And you're right. And if you would have said that housing insecurity is causing homelessness, you'd be right. If you'd have said that insufficient services in other areas was causing homelessness, you'd be right. So there is a big focus on addiction and mental health for sure. And the good thing is that we don't have to supply all of that service with this money. That's coming through the county, through other service providers. The county is opening up a care center, we're calling it, in downtown Dallas that will expand greatly our ability to treat people, addiction services, and also crisis services for behavioral health. So that is a big focus of the state, and a lot of that's being pushed down to the counties. So that is happening parallel to this, and coordination with our behavioral health department and other mental health and addiction providers will be absolutely necessary as we do our work here, connecting people to those services. But you're right, that is one of the causes of homelessness for sure.
My other concern is, or my other question is, because Mr. DeMoe, you mentioned that it's a rumor that we're talking about building a shelter on the S-curves. Well, I don't think anybody has said that we're building a shelter, maybe building a shelter. We don't know because the plan hasn't been written yet. However, if you have all these resources for people to come use, get things from the S-curve, don't you fear that homelessness increase that occurred in Dallas will happen in Monmouth and Independence? And since our police hands are tied when it comes to homelessness and what homelessness people do, why would we want to encourage that in our community?
So I want to go back to your first question and add just one more part. When I said, I wish I had a lot of time to tell you all of the moving parts as we address homelessness and houselessness, you're going to have to spend some more time with us because there are a lot of efforts and a lot of funding and a lot of money for transitional housing and things like that when it comes to addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. We just don't have time to talk about all of that today. And it's all pretty new. This money is coming from the legislature pretty quick, but that's what that strategic plan will be about, is how to incorporate all of that. To your second question, I'm not sure that I would agree that because we started doing services in Dallas that there was an increase in homelessness. I think that we started increasing services in Dallas, and the people that have always been in need finally found somewhere that they could go and get more help as more services were added. I've never seen any data either that I've collected or from others that because we started providing food and other basic needs in Dallas, that it increased homelessness. And again, the data from all partners shows that over 90% of the folks are either from here, have ties here, were born and raised here, went to school here. We're not seeing people flooding to Polk County to get services.
I'll just add too, that one of the purposes of the pilot is for the state to see how they can replicate it in other communities. And one of the intents is that each community is responsible to take care of their own and to take care of the homelessness issues and that the risk issues in their own communities. So if anything, if somebody reaches a state of chronic homelessness, 5 years of homelessness, that probably is where they're going to go. They're going to go to the city. And I think that's one of the reasons why they're encouraging other communities to stand up a response system so that every community is responsible for addressing their own issues.
Additional questions?
Just for my edification, Brent, when you build a building at the S curves, is Polk County Behavioral Health, which is right down the road from there, going to be consolidated in there as well?
No, they
Still
will
stay where they
remain
are?
in their own space at this
Okay.
time. And I also want to mention that we've been talking about moving to Monmouth Independence long before this House bill. That's what we've always wanted to do when we thought about our building. It just happens that these things are happening at a similar time.
Great. I want to just take a moment and thank you guys and the whole team, and I know some of the team is in the back, for putting this together. And I know city manager and I have attended all the meetings that you folks have had, and it's pretty interesting to see all the partners from across the county, both nonprofits and governments. And I really appreciate that you came to visit with us. I know you're doing a road show to visit with with the other cities and the tribe to give them a lot of the same information that you shared with us. And I really appreciate that you guys took the time to come, and I look forward to visiting with you again. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to keep us moving. I have the next report, and what we have, I'm going to get us to, we need to appoint a person to represent the city of Independence on the Polk County Homeless Prevention Advisory Board. It's on page 9 of your packets, and I'm making a recommendation that we appoint Kenna West to represent the city of Independence on the Homeless Prevention Advisory Board. I need a motion.
I move to approve as stated.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion.
I would like to recommend, if possible, to put me on the commission so that I can represent the city, because I've lived here for my whole entire life, and I feel that maybe a different perspective would be essential to this, and I would love to volunteer for that opportunity.
Okay, other discussion? Here, no other discussion. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed.
Opposed.
Roden objects.
Was she doing a motion?
No,
No,
she
she
just
voted that
made a
before.
comment.
Just a comment. Okay, opposed.
Okay, so Roden and Joe in opposition. Motion carries. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on with my report. I'm going to be quick here. Had a lot of activities going on, and you've seen some of them. One of the fun ones we got to do was the opening, the ribbon cutting on the F Street Bridge, which got done this summer after taking a long time to get done. The best part was ODOT paid for the vast majority of that, and that's going to help some of our east-west travel flow. And also the big part was it improves emergency services, because the old bridge, you could not put a fire truck, an ambulance, or a garbage truck on it because it was weight limited. So we now can do that. Had a chance recently to help with the hop run that happened in downtown. Had a chance to speak to people coming to the Ford family Growing Rural Oregon reception. We had people from all across Oregon and from people or from as far away as Kansas coming. The Ford Family Foundation has seen the entrepreneurial efforts and successes that we've had in Independence, and they brought people here for a conference and to see how we did it. Attended recently the Western Oregon University welcome back with the new president, Jesse Peters. He gave a an energetic presentation about where the university is going, what the challenges it faces. And I will tell you that from working with our all hands group, it's been really a joy to have the university as a partner with all the local governments, the fire district, both cities, the school district, everybody working together and along with the county, and it's been really good. Council of Governments, as you know, I've served on that board, and a lot of nuts and boltsy things, but what we were able to do is accept $2 million in DEQ support for improving septic systems. Now that's focused up in the canyon, but there could be some additional dollars to support septic upgrades in other parts of the 3-county area. I chair the Mid-Willamette Valley Community Development Board, and we're working to put all the parts in place to access federal funds for the local governments that are in Polk, Marion, and Yamhill County. We have to get all the stuff's got to get lined up so you can apply for the federal funding. There, for a number of years, there weren't funds coming down from the feds, but there are now, and we want to make sure that local governments are in position to do that. We had a tree planting last Thursday, which was in the Sunset Park, and trees being provided by Pacific Power, and they're not the little trees. They're actually going to put big ones in there. And so we're really excited about that. But we are also very excited to announce that the Oregon State Parks provided us $75,000 to put a playground in that park. And so that should go in late spring and be ready for next summer. And finally, there's a program in Oregon called the Main Street Program that recognizes outstanding downtowns and where things are happening. Independence has for many years been identified as a huge success along their Main Street, and they're going to bring their Main Street conference here next fall. And so that'll be bringing people, and people are coming to stay. They're going to come and eat. They're going to come and enjoy beverages, and they're going to enjoy their time here in Independence. So those are some of the things I've been doing in the last couple of weeks. Moving forward, I'm going to have Councilor Roden. Would you like to make a report on the Traffic Safety Commission?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. At our last traffic safety meeting, we had a review of our traffic data collection. We determined that police are often responding to accidents instead of, there's not very many patrols looking for, I guess there was some racing on the streets. There's been some speeding. We just haven't been able to catch it because we don't have a lot of officers on the streets patrolling for that right now. And we do not have a motorcycle police officer at this time. We had some stop sign changes on 7th Street to improve the flow of traffic. We had parking changes on Osprey Lane. So people can no longer park down one side to improve emergency access to Osprey Lane. And we also changed the stop signs at the corner of 4th and C Street by Independence Elementary School to a 4-way stop so that cars could slow down and be more present around the elementary school. I think it was a pretty successful meeting.
Good. Thank you, Councilor. Historic Preservation, Councilor Jobe.
Thank you, Mayor. So the work continues on 710 Monmouth Street. That's on the corner of Monmouth and 7th Street. Some restoration. Not sure the plans for it, but it is moving forward. I think there's just one more issue with a ramp, and other than that, I think everything's been approved. There was a tree removal at 112 South 3rd Street. We never like to see trees go, but this one was rotting from the inside out. It was a willow tree. And that is it for my report.
Great. And Independence Days Commission, Councilor Kaur, do you have anything to share with us at this point?
June was our last meeting. I've already reported on that. That's when we patted ourselves all on the back and said, see you next year. Expect meetings to start up shortly.
Thank you.
Get ready for the
Appreciate
next
that.
one.
Great. City Manager West, to you. Oh, if I could be so bold for a moment, I did just want to draw people's attention that I did issue a proclamations contained in the packet for the Hispanic Heritage Month, and I didn't want to, there's nothing that needs to be done. I just wanted to declare that it happened, and it's an important message to our community. So thank you for reminding me. City Manager West.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, with your approval, I'd like to cede my time to our contract attorney. She'll be filling us all in on what we're going to be seeing and hearing for the that upcoming appeal and public hearing.
Great, thank you. Good evening and welcome. Nice to see you.
Thanks so much. Yes, I'm here. I'm in front of you. Isn't that exciting?
Yes.
A little better than a face on a screen, although faces on screens are better than nothing. Okay, so we're doing a mini training this evening. Not only, this is not just for the council's benefit, but we understand that this is now being broadcast to members of the public appearing by Zoom, and it can be really confusing. Counselors wear a number of hats, as you know. There are laws that govern how you behave in public meetings. There are laws that govern how you pull the budget together and adopt the budget. You adopt your own laws that govern sometimes council interactions or council policies, certainly ordinances that govern your city. And in the land use context, it's probably one of the areas that has the most layers of law. So there's constitutional law, Oregon and federal constitutional law that governs your process. There's also Oregon administrative law, Oregon statute, and city, 2 layers of city adopted legislation, which is your development code and your comp plan. So as the council, you have a legislative role when you're adopting the comp plan, amending the comp plan, adopting the development code, and amending the development code. That's when you get to still governed by state law to some extent, but you have a much broader ability to take in the information that you've gathered from your constituents, listen to what your planning commission recommends, and then implement it by adopting or changing governing law. In a quasi-judicial context, which is the hearing, for example, the hearing we're holding this evening, you're sitting as a judge. So you as the council or prior councils have already made the decision of what law is going to apply to certain types of application. That law is on the books. And the reason it's helpful to have it on the books and be very clear and applied is because you want applicants, you want developers coming in to know, what can I do with my property? You want citizens to know what's going to happen in my neighborhood. If you don't like what's happening under the law that's been adopted, you get to go around and you get to talk to staff and ask the planning commission, maybe you could recommend some amendments. But in the context of a hearing, you're the judge, and you need to be very conscientious of the process that's accorded by the Constitution, and then the substance of your decision. So let's break that down a little bit. So process, just I guess back to being a judge. What do you expect from judges? You want them to be impartial arbiters. You want them to collect the facts that are presented to them. You don't want them going out and advocating, collecting their own evidence. They have to listen to what the attorneys bring before them. And then they have to apply the law as it's been interpreted by case law. So it's written law and then it's interpreted by case law. And that's what you get to do right now in this hearing context. So you have the applicant that puts information in front of you. You have appellants that are going to put information in front of you. I think the evidence has already been compiled. It's in the record. So all you really get to hear are arguments about how the law that's adopted, your development code, applies to that evidence. In order to make sure that everybody, the applicant and the appellants, have a fair tribunal, you're going to make sure again that your decision is based just on the evidence in the record. So if, for example, you've read an op-ed, you've been approached in the grocery store, you read a Facebook post, any of those things that pertain to the application that's before you tonight, we want to get that into the record. So the mayor has a script and the mayor is going to ask, does anybody have what's called ex parte contacts? And that is information that you've gathered that may influence or add to the information you know about the application, and it might influence your decision. So to the extent you've talked to Sue, like I said, at the grocery store, or you've read that op-ed, please, when you're going down the line, you're going to make sure that all of that comes into the record. Whether you have a copy of a Facebook post to just put in the record, or you're just going to remember clearly not just, I talked to Sue in the grocery store, but I was approached, I was asked to please vote X or Y way. The argument that was posed to me was, you know, X, Y, and Z, you're going to explain the substance of the conversation. And then that makes sure that the rest of the panel knows all of the evidence that you're thinking of when you're making a decision. It allows the appellants and the applicant to rebut that, to say, wait, that isn't right. And let me tell you why that's not right. So that ensures that you're a fair decision maker. Similarly, if you've come into the meeting, any time that you're having a land use hearing, and you have what's called prejudgment bias, you've already made up your mind. Maybe you campaigned that absolutely not, I want a certain area of town to be a bird sanctuary. I don't care that it's zoned. I don't care that there's an application before us. 100%, no matter what happens, I am never approving development in that area. That is prejudgment bias because you're not making your decision based on the evidence before you or the laws that the council has previously put on the books. So if you can recognize, hey, I've got some bias on this thing, but I'm willing to put it aside and decide based only on the record and the law, then you can go ahead and vote. But if you can't, if you know in your heart of hearts, I've campaigned on this, there's statements in the newspapers, I've posted on Facebook, and there's a lot of evidence that undermines you as a fair decision maker, just say, I'm biased. I have to step aside and step away from the decision. Failure to do so, failure either to make a decision without announcing ex parte contacts or to make a decision, even if just one decision maker fails to disclose ex parte contacts or has prejudgment bias, it undermines the decision sufficiently so that LUBA will reverse it, remand it, and cost the city quite a bit of money, potentially even require you to pay attorney's fees. So I just want you to take the process side of the decision-making in a quasi-judicial hearing seriously. That's just the process side. So then substantively, again, we were talking about you're making your decision based on the law that you've adopted. The buzzword for that is applicable criteria. So your staff, whenever you have an application before you, says we have this application, and then they read to you all the applicable criteria, which means it meets these setbacks, it meets these block lengths, it has access, all of the things that you previously decided need to be in your code to ensure that you have a safe community. And if those are met, if the evidence in the record indicates that each criteria is met, or it could be met by imposition of a condition, then you have to approve. For instance, if you have a setback requirement of say 5 feet and the application before you shows only a setback of 4 feet, you could approve with the condition that the setbacks be increased to 5 feet to meet your criteria. And in the context of housing, you just had a wonderful presentation about how much the state is prioritizing housing. So now, not only do we apply our criteria, but if our criteria is not clear and objective, we don't get to apply it. So it's called, it used to be needed housing, that we had to apply clear and objective criteria to needed housing. Now it's all housing. So the legislature keeps moving into our province, telling us how communities are going to prioritize increasing their building inventories. So we're trying to increase the supply because the demand is so high for housing in our state. I already talked, so setbacks obviously are clear and objective. I unfortunately was representing a city who was found to apply not clear, not objective criteria. And what they were trying to ensure was access across a railroad. They thought they were fully within their rights to require this certain type of access. And so they denied it because there wasn't access, and the applicant successfully appealed. It was found that that access was not clear or objective because the timing of it wasn't clear. Like, when do you have to provide that access? And And unfortunately, that means that Luba reversed the decision, required approval of this small community, and made the city pay the applicant's attorney's fees. So that is all required by law. Luba doesn't even have a choice. If they reverse on application of unclear or non-objective criteria, they have to reverse it, they have to send it back to you, and they have to make you pay attorney's fees. So, so when this hearing, any hearing in the land use context, what we want to make sure is that applicable criteria is satisfied, that the criteria that you're applying is clear and objective. And if it isn't satisfied, can it be satisfied by the imposition of a condition? And I mean, it's kind of simple, kind of complicated. I'm going to be here. I can answer questions now. I understand it's a learning process for everyone involved, even me, because I'm telling you, the law keeps changing on this on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, here's what we're gonna do. Thank you. I think, and you'll be here if we have additional questions. So just to let everybody know, there was a staff report that was not necessarily included in the original packet. And some counselors didn't get it until late this afternoon. And so they have not necessarily had a chance to completely read that. So what I'm going to do now is declare about a 10-minute recess for people to be able to read the material if they haven't had a chance to. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to do that. And if you're not done after 10 minutes, we'll extend. And we'll be in recess to read the material. Audience, you're welcome to talk and move around, go to the restroom or anything like that. But we're in recess for about 10 minutes. Are we good again? We good again? Okay, we're back from recess. We're going to do the public hearing, appeal of the Planning Commission decision, file number SUB 2022-01. I have specific things the law requires me to read, and so I will read for a little while here. I'll now open the public hearing on appeal of SUB 2022-01. My name is John McCardle. I'm the mayor and chair of this hearing. The hearing will be conducted in accordance with Independence Development Code and State Law ORS 197.797. Specifically, the staff will first present the staff report and recommendations. The applicant will then have an opportunity to present the proposal and address any issues raised by the staff report and recommendations. For public testimony, I will first ask from people who would like to speak in favor of the proposal. I will then ask to hear from people who have neutral comments or questions about the proposal, either for or against. Finally, those in opposition to the proposal will have an opportunity to present testimony, starting with the appellants, excuse me. City staff may then present additional material and recommendations based on the public testimony. The applicant will be given the opportunity to have the last word. After each presentation, I will ask for questions from the council. Please note that this is an appeal of a planning commission decision. Testimony should be directed only to the applicable criteria upon which the appeal was filed, the appeals filed with the city are based. If you intend to present oral testimony, please fill out a request to speak form located in the back of the room and give it to city staff, and I have some of those already. We are recording this hearing, so please also clearly state your name and city of residence when you are asked to speak. This will help in preparing accurate written minutes of the hearing and also assist with mailing copies of the decision to all interested parties. If you have written testimony or other evidence to submit, please give that to staff so it can be entered in the record. Given the number of the people present, we ask that each speaker limit themselves to no more than 3 minutes. I will give unlimited time to the applicant and to the appellant, the primary applicant and the primary appellant, and then others will be limited to 3 minutes. Please remember that all presentations are timed. You will be informed when your allotted time has expired. All speakers exceeding the time limit will be asked by me to immediately conclude their remarks. If you don't finish your presentation, be sure to provide a copy of your statement to staff. The applicant and the appellant will not be limited to 3 minutes, but they are encouraged to limit their presentations as they are able to be respectful of our time constraints. In order to minimize repetitive testimony, organizations are encouraged to have only one person speak for the group, and with other members of the organization standing to show their support. Each person may testify only once unless called back to the podium at the request of the council to respond to a question. Thank you for your cooperation. Now, the next thing we do is we have conflict of interest and ex parte contacts. The mayor and council are required to disclose any conflicts of interest and ex parte contacts that we have with the proposal or the applicant. That is, whether we have any financial or personal interest in the proposals and whether we have spoken with anybody about the proposal outside of this hearing. Also, councilors may only participate if they can do so without undue bias, either for or against the application. Do any councilors wish to make disclosures? I will begin. I live 2 blocks away from this subject property. I've read about this in the paper. I was also approached at a previous council meeting in the hallway by a person who wanted to talk to me about that. And once he started talking to me about it, I said, I can't talk to you anymore about that because it's not allowed. I also received email from the appellants along the way asking about the process, which I have forwarded to city staff. I just wanted to make sure that it was noted that I did forward that communication along. So that's my ex parte contacts and communications. I'm going to guess other councilors are going to have some of the same kinds of things. And so I will look to on this side, please.
I had a conversation with a resident about planning commission process. I forwarded those questions to an email to City Manager West, who responded to all councilors with that information. Other than that, like the mayor said, I received the appellant's materials via email to my personal account.
I did receive a couple of emails from a couple individuals before the appeal was filed, and then afterwards, I think we received as a group a copy of the formal appeal. And for those also, I did, my understanding was that they were working on an appeal, and that I think it was Fred that was helping with that, but that was my communication.
Thank you, Counselor.
I live on South 7th Street, just south of G, so a little further down. I too did receive some emails that were not read at that time, sorry. And so that's the sum of what I have.
Thank you, Counselor.
I do not live in the area. Of course, I have driven through it before, but I did not go down to personally inspect the property. I did send a couple of questions to our city manager today for clarification on the last documentation that we had, but that was it. I have received no other information, had no further discussions, and don't feel I have any bias.
Thank you, Counselor.
I often joke that I live on 7th Street with half of the community, but I do live on 7th Street. I live right beside the mayor, so I'm 2 blocks away from where this is located as well. I've had emails sent to me that I did not read, even recent emails that were sent to all of council that I did not read. I was asked about the appeal in a coffee shop in Monmouth and said, I wish you luck on your appeal, but I cannot discuss it any further than that. I did get an email, a text message about it, and I said, it's not appropriate for you to text me. Bring this up with the city. The city has more information on how to do this process than I do. I feel I have no undue bias and can judge this without bias.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor?
Yeah, I did receive I think one of the emails that many of the counselors received. I did read it. But I think I can judge it without any bias.
Great.
What did it say? What was that email, or is it in the record? Was it forwarded?
I think it was forwarded, yes, it's forwarded to staff.
Okay.
Thank you. Counselor. Thank you, Counselor. Thank you, Counselor. Okay, are there any challenges from the audience as to the conflict of interest, ex parte context, or bias related to any member of the council? I don't see anybody jumping up and down. Okay. State law requires me to tell you a number of things at the beginning of the hearing. First, the applicable substantive criteria that apply to this application are contained in the written staff report and will be identified and discussed in the oral staff report. Second, your testimony, arguments, and evidence must be directed towards these criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan, development code, or other city adopted plans that you believe apply to this application. That's an ORS 1977975B. Third, failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers or other people an opportunity to respond may preclude the appeal of a decision on this application based on the issue. That's ORS 1977975C. Finally, to the applicant, failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the city to respond to the issues preclude any action for damages in circuit court, ORS 1977963B. I'll now open the hearing, and staff, please present the staff report.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to sit over here just so I can look at everybody in the room. So hopefully that's fine. Sorry, Councilor Morton. What we're here to talk about tonight is an appeal of a subdivision. It's a 5-lot subdivision, 0.42 acres at 7th and E. The lot is about 18,000 square feet in size. It contains a single family home at present. And what the applicant is seeking to do is add 4 townhouses to the lot. The decision, the application was submitted by Sean Duggar, who's here tonight, and was considered complete on June 7th. The Planning Commission voted to approve the application at their public hearing on August 1st. Some of the details about the project are included And the staff report, and there was a larger planning commission staff report that was also sent to you, that was part of the packet as well, that was meant to be included, but then this didn't get included. So anyways, there's essentially 4 things that I want to just articulate right at the start of this. And one, like Terry said, this is a quasi judicial hearing. You guys are acting as judges on this. Yeah, consider the evidence and judge accordingly. Also, clear and objective criteria. I noted that in the staff report, but that's another thing that Carrie mentioned. If the criteria is not clear, then ultimately, like, we can't use it as a basis for denying an application. We can't use subjective criteria either. Third thing is the development process. And this is sort of where some things get confusing. Development in the city of Independence goes through 3 primary phases. You go through a subdivision approval to essentially create the lots. You go through engineering, where you're working with Gerald and you're designing the civil improvements for the lots. And then you're going through a building permit process, working with Jeff Kennedy, our building official, to actually put the buildings on the lot. What you will notice is a number of the criteria in the staff report pertain specifically to the subdivision process. They don't relate to the subsequent building process. We will evaluate those items in the future. Those standards in the building process include things like residential design standards, things like lot coverage, all of that sort of stuff. I mentioned that because those things are important. They will be addressed by the proposal, but they're not something that we consider at this phase. We don't know what the buildings per se are going to look like, all of that sort of stuff. Having said that, though, there are some very important decisions that get made at the subdivision phase that will influence how the buildings look. And so we will talk about that in just a little bit more. The last thing I want to note is House Bill 2001 required the city to allow a duplex on every lot that could allow a single family, the development of a single family home. Based on that, this applicant could potentially submit an application to divide the lot into 3 separate lots. It would be a minor partition. It wouldn't go to the planning commission. And then they could actually build duplexes by right on each of those 5,000 square foot lots. That's allowed under House Bill 2001. Having said that, though, I want you to, one point I wanted to make before I make my next point is that the fact that it went to the planning commission at all was because he was trying to create ownership options so people could own individual townhouse lots instead of a larger duplex, right? Having said that, I think there's a misperception that this is somehow related to House Bill 2001. And I just want to clarify that in the city of Independence, townhouses have been allowed on corner lots since 2010, right? Townhouses with lot sizes of 2,500 square feet have been allowed in the city since 2010. This is a corner lot. This is a townhouse with those townhouses with those lot sizes. So I don't want to confuse this with the fact that House Bill 2001 was recently passed. Hey, Jason, you got that project thing? Can you show that real quick? Perfect. So this sort of shows some of the details of the project. You can see you got the existing house here. You've got a couple of townhouse units and it says duplex, but I want you to know these are each townhouse units. Can you go to the next one? Because that's really what I'd like to show. Really the difference between, oh, you went too far. The difference between a townhouse and a duplex, and if you could zoom in on that, that would be awesome. And I think that it's really clear, it's really important for us to get this right off the bat. A duplex looks one way, right? The only difference between a townhouse is the fact that it has a property line. in the center of it, right? And so each of those sites could be owned individually. A duplex, you have one owner, it's one person owning that. A townhouse, there's two separate owners. Just wanted to make that clear.
Brent, are you saying in a duplex, only rental schemes with duplexes? There's no ownership, individual ownership in a duplex at all? It's only rentals?
Well, sometimes folks can go in and buy one side of a duplex and then rent out the other side. That
Okay.
sometimes happens, but it's that person owning both sides of the duplex.
Gotcha.
Continue with your presentation.
Perfect. So, I'm gonna try and go through these. There was 10 items raised in the initial appeal. I'd love to just go through those really quick. And then we did get an additional submittal that addressed other issues. I'm gonna try and go fast through this. Some of them I'll try and go through quicker. So the first item dealt with urbanization, and it talked about a certain density that was achieved. This is one of those things where this specific statement is a comprehensive plan policy. There's no implementing like standard where it says thou shalt have a certain density in a zone. So this does not specifically set a mandatory standard for density in the city of Independence. Also, as I noted elsewhere in my staff report, the comprehensive plan makes no distinction between single family homes and there's no gray. It's either single family or multifamily. Well, what is this, right? What is a townhouse with a, what is that? Is a duplex multifamily, but a townhome single family? Like, there's no gray in the comprehensive plan. And so based on that, I would argue that that's not a clear and objective standard at all. Not that you could use a policy language to deny an application, but it's just not clear in general. So that really applies to item 1 and item 2. I'm going to try and go fast through these. Item number 3 talks about the low density residential zone, and it speaks to the purpose of the low density zone. It says that this is specifically not low density. And the appellant points to the units per gross acre, or the units per acre of 8. Now, in the Independence Development Code, like I said, the Development Code has allowed townhomes on lots 2,500 square feet or less in the low density residential zone since 2010. It allows duplexes on lots of 5,000 square feet. So if you actually built that, you're going to achieve a density of 17 units per acre potentially, right? And so I noticed that, and I actually took that to the Planning Commission as part of a separate hearing. They're the ones that help interpret the code. And so as part of that hearing, I said, which of these two govern? Is it minimum lot size? Is it density? At that time, they told me minimum lot size governs what can be done on a lot. I think it makes sense too, because to take an extreme example, if you have a 5,000 square foot lot, which is our minimum lot size in our low density residential zone, or medium density residential zone, or high density residential zone, if you have a 5,000 square foot lot, guess what density you're going to get to? Over 8. You're going to get to over 8 the density of the low density residential zone. So is a 5,000 square foot lot non-conforming in the low density residential zone? I would say no, it absolutely isn't. And so at that time, the Planning Commission made that determination that minimum lot size governs what can be done on a lot. Also, in implementing House Bill 2001, the state made exactly the same determination, where they said, and it's on page 6 of my staff report. I'm sorry, I don't have the overall packet. It says, in the implementation of the bill, the state specifically applied administrative rules to ensure that if a city over 10,000 in population applies density maximums in a zone, it may not apply those maximums to the development of duplexes. So they took a similar sort of approach where they said minimum lot size is what governs the development of duplexes. So All right, so keep going on. Appeal item 4. The applicant or the appellant identified that that 2 of the lots were not actually 2,500 square feet in size based on the dimensions shown. And that's actually correct. Go up a page, Jason. And then scroll down, or yeah, zoom in and then scroll down. So these 2 lots right here, it shows something like 2,600 square feet.
It's on the screen behind us.
600 square feet right here. What this appears to have been was an error based on whoever drew it. When you calculate this 26 whatever by this number here, you get 92 feet here, which is 10 more than 82. And when you calculate this, go up just a little, Jason. When you calculate this number, which is 3,200 by this number, you actually get 52 here. When you divide this number by this number, you actually get 52. So whoever drew that put 10 feet in the wrong spot, but calculated the lot sizes right, but just depicted the length of the lines wrong. So based on that, that's easy to address. You'll see in the staff report, I suggested a condition that the applicant shall ensure that the townhouse lots are at least 2,500 square feet each. Again, it's an 18,000 square foot lot. I don't have much concern with the applicant's ability to achieve those lot sizes. Appeal item 5 talks specifically about the residential design standards. The residential design standards are something that gets applied at the time of a building permit as part of a different phase of application, which is why I specifically didn't address them in my criteria of the original staff report. I didn't even touch subchapter 19. That being said, all development on the site will have to conform with the residential design standards. That includes the fact that buildings are going to have at least 25% windows on the first floor elevation. There's going to have to be gables oriented to the street. There's going to need to be porches off the front of the building. All of those things are in our residential design standards. That is what actually achieves the purpose of the residential design standards, which is addressed in that appeal item. Appeal item 6 talks about the main entrance, and this one, you'll note that I said I specifically didn't address this issue in the original staff report. That being said, I do believe that it absolutely can meet those standards. I think I'll try and get to this. Okay, I'll get to it. So essentially, can you pull up subchapter 19? It's there. So let's look at it together. Residential design standards, perfect. And so you can see this talks about establish a base for the quality of design of new homes. This specifically it points to it from the low density zone when it's talking about new structures, right? This is specifically for new buildings. So go down to E, which is, I don't know what page it is. But let's look at this E since we're on appeal item 6. So it says buildings shall have their primary pedestrian orientation and pedestrian entrances oriented to the street that serve the project site. Okay, if a proposal seeks to construct a duplex, townhouse, or multifamily structure and the project is situated on 2 streets, the project shall orient units to each street, right? This is not specifically on what this is specifically talking about is the southwest unit doesn't have orientation directly to a public street. And so this is one of the issues that they raise on appeal. So this specifically doesn't apply because it's not on 2 streets. The reason that the planning commission put that there, and they did that in 2019, was to get more interesting looking duplexes, because we're getting a whole bunch that had just 2 doors and 2 garages oriented to the front street. I'll get to that in just a second. Then look, primary pedestrian entrances shall connect to the sidewalk via a straight path that is minimum of 5 feet wide, where there is a continuous paved connection between the sidewalk and the front entrance. And if the driveway is within 20 feet of the door, the driveway may be used to meet this standard. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is that the driveway, in this case for the southwest unit, would be able to meet that standard. Absolutely. And if it was a duplex on the lot, we would totally allow that orientation. In fact, we would want it for the exact reason that 2 was written. Now, Jason, I'm sorry to make the switch back and forth, but can you go back to those project images? Down to page 3, please. Perfect. So when you look at this, can you zoom in just a little bit? This is what I would like to just, yes, zoom in. So when you have orientation as proposed, where you have a shared drive and then the 2 units oriented to the shared drive, what you can do is you can essentially hide parking. You can minimize the scale of the, the overall complex. It looks from the street more like a single family unit, right? Scroll down just a little bit, Jason, so you can see how this would work. Go down a little bit more, Jason. So you have the front door oriented to the street, the garage doors oriented to the side access, and then you would have the front door for in this case, this would be the southwest unit, the front door oriented to that shared access. Go to the image on the right there, Jason, would you? When you have everything oriented to a street, if perhaps they were to shift the units 90 degrees to address the access requirement, what happens is you have the front doors oriented to, this would be East Street here, and the garage doors oriented to East Street. The scale of the building would look a lot bigger, and essentially what you're going to get is, go down to the next page, would you? Something like they're building out in Brandy Meadows, right, Chet? This is something that went out in Brandy Meadows. Scroll over just a little bit so we can see the whole thing. So this is essentially what you would get. You would get 2 doors, 2 garage doors, right? The reason that the planning commission supported this side orientation was they saw the possibility that there would be more, that it would be smaller scale at the street, at the East Street. They could design it in a different way, and you could have potentially more parking in a garage off the shared access. Essentially, what's going to happen if you shifted the units 90 degrees is you would get 1 parking spot in the garage, because you're going to be like 50 feet wide or 52 feet wide. You're going to have 10 foot, 10 foot, 2 10-foot garage doors. You're going to be at 40 feet with the 5-yard setback, 5-foot side yard setback. So, so essentially this is what you would get if you shifted it 90 degrees. So based on that, staff recommended approval of the application and the site orientation. Even though, as I'll note in appeal items 8 and 9, that isn't specifically allowed within the code. One other thing that I should mention about the site orientation and orienting to a site, a shared access. A shared access will enable the developer to retain, or the neighborhood to retain, the maximum amount of parking on street parking. When you start putting a number of access points into a site, like go up one more, Jason, I'm sorry. If you were to put another access right here, then try and do a shared access point, essentially you would eliminate the ability to park on a street, on this street right here, right? Does that make sense? Because you're putting a new access to the street. And that would only be like 10, maybe 15 feet here. So, all right, so based on that, let's go on to appeal item number 7. Appeal item number 7 talks about the traffic impact. It mentions that adding 5 units or 4 would add trips to a potentially underperforming, failing intersection. It's their argument. Our response to that is, again, it's the ability to require a traffic impact analysis rests with the public works director. In this case, he didn't feel like it was warranted. Part of that is the threshold is 50 PM peak trips per hour. PM peak trips per PM peak hour trips. And so in this case, and it's based on ITE standards, there's 1 PM peak hour trip per house, right? It's 0.99, which essentially is 1. Also, not all trips are going to go the same way. So in 2019, when we did the transportation system plan, there was 1,300 people that went through 7th and Monmouth during PM peak hours. 1,300 people. This would add 4 trips to that intersection, and they wouldn't all be in one direction, right? Not all of those 4 trips too would necessarily go to that intersection. Some people might take G to get out of the neighborhood. Some people might take F to get to grocery outlet or wherever they might go. Some people might be coming to the site. So based on all of that, and looking at just the scale of this is 0.3%. If all trips went to that intersection, that would be 0.3% of the overall traffic at that intersection. That does not, we cannot then go and say, hey, you need to pony up and fix this intersection. That just wouldn't be proportionate to the development. So based on that, we didn't feel like that was, we didn't need a traffic impact analysis to tell us that. I'm sorry. Appeal item number 8 talks about streets, and it talks about additional traffic. The items that are cited in 9090 and the Independence Development Code specifically talk more about like how to design a street system. It's not specifically about like additional traffic. So it's like, hey, use an access road if you're going to get to something like the street, stuff like that, rather than like, hey, this is what, or require this when there's more traffic. Based on all of the standards in 9090, with the exception of this access management requirement, it absolutely meets the standards in 9090. So appeal item number 9 gets back to it states all lots in a proposed residential subdivision shall have frontage on and access from a local collector street. In this case, the southwest lot does not have direct frontage to East Street. It doesn't. However, the planning commission and I felt like it was appropriate because if it was a duplex, it would have access to a local street. The lot would have access to that local street, right? The only difference is the property line. So based on that, we felt like it was appropriate to allow that. I will say that if the council wants to, you could simply add a condition that says those lots on the west side of the site be shifted 90 degrees, right? And there could be a 225-foot lots, and it would absolutely meet that requirement. Is the recommendation of staff, though, that the proposal as it is right now is actually a better way to lay out the site. Same thing with appeal item number 10. It says access, it states that each lot shall abut a street other than an alley for a width of 25 feet. So it's essentially the same argument. If you shifted it 90 degrees, you would absolutely meet the standard. This is actually a better way to store parking. This will actually provide a better residential design for the house, all of that sort of stuff. Now, based on that, we did get these other things too, and I just want to go through these real quick. So this was sent by the appellant directly to you folks over the weekend. I'll just go through this really quick. So on page 1, it mentions House Bill 2001, and it specifically asks, it seems like it's quoting a website. It says Q7, our city is required to allow middle housing on small non-conforming lots of record. This is not a non-conforming lot of record. This is a completely conforming lot. So that doesn't pertain. Page 2, where it talks about the low density zone, I think I talked about that just a little bit. Let's go to page 6 of this. It says that this would not protect the low density residential zone. Protection is not a clear objective. Like it's not clear and objective. What is protect is different for everybody. So I would say that cannot be used to determine exactly what to do with this application. Also, I'll just call out the appellant mentions Appendix 3. Appendix 3, which is on our code page, it's not actually part of our code. It was something that was adopted as part of the it wasn't adopted. It was something that was done as part of the vision plan for the city of Independence back in 2009. And it's not code. We don't use it to regulate, but I did go and I looked at it today and I thought it was really interesting. Do you have that Appendix 3 right there? It's not code, but it gives us insight to when this whole thing was, what folks were thinking when this whole thing was developed. Now look at this. It says lot area in the RS zone, that's low density residential zone. Can you zoom in on that just a little bit, Jason? It says the minimum lot size for corner lots for the exclusive construction of duplexes, townhouses, and row houses shall be 2,500 square feet in order to allow for more density. This type of higher density development is allowed only on corner lots. The lot area for single family homes shall remain 5,000 square feet. Go down to the explanation rationale. A 2,500 square foot lot is conducive to fee simple row house townhouse development. Typically, a 2,500 square foot lot consists of a 25-foot wide lot and 20 to 25-foot row house or townhouse frontage. 2 attached homes could be built on a 5,000 square foot lot with a rental or condominium structure. Row houses, townhouses, and duplexes provide opportunities for increased density by placing parking behind this type of housing. The integrity of the building facade can be further improved. This type of housing also provides opportunity for entry-level home buyers and empty nesters. Additionally, these housing types maintain the character, scale, and massing of existing single dwelling residential neighborhood. And I'll just point out that when you look at these pictures on the right, can you scroll to the right just a little, Jason? You see that's 4 units right there that are shown, and then up above it's a 3-unit townhouse row house structure. So I thought that was interesting. I did mention subchapter 19 and the residential design standards, which are mentioned on 7. I did mention the PM peak period. There. On page 11 of what was submitted to you, they do mention size and the fact that the carport that is existing on the site will likely have to be removed to actually make the lot size work. I agree with the appellant in that case. I don't specifically see how that affects us negatively one way or another. I will just point out one more thing. So that's basically everything. I did have one more thing, 90 language. So this, so you can see here, scroll down just a little more, Jason. So a little more. No. All right, so here, collector and residential lot access to arterials and collectors. So this is specifically talking about this sort of stuff. When a residential development abuts an existing or proposed arterial or collector, which 7th Street is, the planning commission shall require that access to such streets be limited. So the idea of limiting access to 7th was specifically something that we tell the planning commission that they should do, that they did that as part of this application. There's only the application would only maintain the existing lot access from the house. Go down just a little bit. It says the way that you can do that includes a series of cul-de-sacs, C-shaped streets, shared driveways, that where no lots derive direct access to the arterial or collector street. This application would do that. So based on all of that stuff, I guess I would just say this type of use has been allowed within the city since 2010. The application can absolutely, if there are items that you folks see that raise concerns, we can condition them to continue to allow the development of this site. I did recommend one additional condition of approval based on the 2,500 square foot lot size. You could potentially also add that condition that shifts those westerly lots. That's completely appropriate. But based on all of that stuff, this application is very consistent with our code. And so based on that, I would recommend approval with those conditions. And I'm sorry I took so long to present all that stuff.
Appreciated the complete presentation. I'm looking for a little guidance here, Carrie. Do I go to questions here or do I go to the applicant? I think I go to the.
Yeah, I actually. I had noted that ask staff questions now if they wanted to, and then you'll have another opportunity to ask questions after all the testimony.
Questions to staff at this point. Counselor Joe.
Fred, I have a question for you. You had mentioned it being a corner lot and that you could divide it into 5,000 square feet, petition it that way. Is that anywhere? I mean, can you do it on any lot or it has to be a corner lot in order to divide it? I didn't quite understand that.
Oh, I'm sorry. So right under House Bill 2001, it's any lot you could divide into 5,000 square feet and do duplexes on each of them. That's essentially how House Bill 2001 works. It would be an allowed use within the zone. If you had the lot size to allow that use, you could build that. I guess the point that I was trying to make is under our code, even before House Bill 2001, we specified that duplexes, townhouses, and row houses were allowed on corner lots. Duplexes, if the lot was 5,000 square feet in size, townhouses, it's essentially at least a 5,000 square foot lot to do 2,500 square foot units, or there's no limitation on how many you could actually put on.
But it wouldn't actually be a corner lot, right? Like it wouldn't be a corner lot anymore at that point.
Right, so that tripped me up, like conceptually,
Yeah.
like how does that actually work? But no, it's from the original lot. If that makes sense, because it's originally a corner lot, because essentially what happens is when you create one townhouse lot, if you did 2,500 square foot lot, townhouse has to be attached to another townhouse, right?
Right. But it's no longer a corner lot, so, but it still applies because it used to be a corner lot? Is that
It's
right?
It's the underlying parcel that is considered the corner lot.
Okay, and then we are talking about townhouses to be sold individually as like zero lot line homes and not rental duplexes. That's
That's specifically what we're talking
what we're talking. Okay, just want to clarify. Thank you.
Additional questions for staff?
That answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Counselor Roden.
So I interpreted the appeal differently for item number 4, the density, area, and dimensions requirements. So maybe I could get some clarification on that. So if we could look at project image number 1. And I could be, just hear me out. When the appeal says that they're concerned about the density, area, and dimensions requirements, this isn't the image I'm looking for. I'm looking for the one that showed the overview of the whole kit and caboodle.
I think it's a project image, Jason, just a different page.
I think it was page, I thought it was
Yeah,
page 1.
there it is.
Okay, yeah, right here. So when I read the appeal, I looked at this and thought, look at how much ground coverage we have on this property. So how much density I'm looking at, I know you're saying density is how much the house takes up, but if we look at this parcel of land and how it's being divided, we're covering the bulk of 0.42 acres with either concrete or a building. And so when I looked at it, I see the complaint is we're covering too much of that lot up with something. So I can see their point. Is there, I thought we had in our code a requirement that says only this portion of a lot can be covered. Is that not the case?
We do have that standard. It doesn't, it applies specifically to buildings and it doesn't apply to something like shared driveways. So it's like a shared driveway. So it's 40% lot coverage for buildings, but we don't have specifically a shared driveway or a driveway requirement. We don't calculate lot coverage for driveways.
Okay, because I thought we did that before, because we had someone come in to do a driveway and lot change on the corner of C and 6th Street. And we limited how much driveway they could have because it covered up too much of their ground. So I thought we did that there. My other thing is my understanding of this is, in my interpretation, have we done an environmental impact study because we are located right beside Ash Creek with the amount of ground coverage we have in close proximity to the creek? Have we looked at the water related permits and reviews, stormwater runoffs, fill material getting into the waterways, solid and hazardous waste? Does the appeal look at those types of issues when we are looking at, because it's right beside the creek and we're covering up the vast majority of that lot? Does that make sense? Am I making sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So if you're looking at a environmental issue, this isn't actually designated as a wetland. It's already developed residential areas. That's what you're looking at, is where we're not wetlands. When they actually get into the design, the engineering part of it, we look at the threshold for impervious surface. Once they hit 10,000 square feet of impervious surface, under the public works standards, it requires detention and water quality. So they will have to meet that standard for the impervious surface and the water quality to hold back that water so it's not just releasing a bunch of water into Ash Creek, and also it's treating the water appropriately.
Great, because that's the other thing I was looking at, because when the applicant said that they are worried about the impact to the low density housing surrounding that, I'm wondering how much of that water runoff is going to get into the creek? What's the environmental impact? How much of it is going to run onto the neighbors' houses that are right beside that? And are all those things, is that what they mean by the appeal item number 4, density?
So all houses are required to drain through weed pools to the curb or connect to a storm system. They're required to detain and withhold water. Basically, you have to hold it back to pre-developed rates. In this city, we consider pre-developed rates pre any of us being here. So this would have been a prairie area. So we do the calculation between what's the runoff rate for a prairie area, a very low rate, versus what's the runoff rate for an impervious area. That additional runoff, they have to hold back and detain, and it can only be metered out at the pre-developed rate. So that's what stops the flow of additional water and erosion and all the other there's water quality built in with that. So once they hit that 10,000 square foot trigger, all of those fall under the engineering review, and they have to comply with that. We have a list of how they can take care of it.
So because they're dividing this into so many little lots, does that mean they'll never get to that 10,000 square foot threshold where we have to look at the environmental impact?
We look at it as a whole building. We don't look at it as cities that are it comes in it's like a subdivision with 50 lots or 100 lots or 1,000 lots. We look at it as a whole and say, okay, your coverage is going to be X. Are you over or under that 10,000? Over 10,000.
Okay. Additional questions for staff at this point? Okay, because you've already explained, you've done all the things that the state outlines here, that you identified the application, the criteria, you summarize the findings, and you've mentioned the additional written material that has been received. I don't believe there's anything else, any other written material you need to mention? Oh,
One final note on the fire.
please.
Oh, the only thing I was gonna say is that illustrates a good difference between the 3 phases of the subdivision process, right? We're talking specifically about the land use stuff. Once they get through the land use stuff and they start hiring engineers and whatnot, working with Gerald, that's the second phase, right? Once they get the civil improvements in and everything like that, then they actually can create the lots. And then once they have the lots, they start putting the houses on.
Okay, so one more question based on that, I'm sorry. So if this appeal that they brought forth fails, could a environmental request study be made by the developer? I mean, would the developer be required to prove that we're not impacting the environment by building so close to the creek? Is that what the next phase would be?
That's what our public works standards are for. If they meet the requirements of the public works standards, they meet the requirements not only of the city, but of state too. We're under what's called a TMDL permit through DEQ. That's a total maximum daily load. And we have to meet that in our code standards. We have to apply those standards.
Okay,
That's one more question.
please, Councilor Joe.
The remaining house that is probably gonna get torn down, what could go there, like a fourplex or something like that? I'm trying to understand.
No, so they're proposing to keep the existing house. So what your point is a good one. Like, I mean, potentially they could have come in and done 3 duplex lots, right? They could have been proposing 6 units, and what they're trying to keep the existing house on the corner.
Does this stop them from coming in the future and changing their mind on that?
It's not, I got Carrie talking to me. It's not the application that's before you. The application that's before you is to create 5 lots, right? Townhouses on 4 of them.
Okay. Alrighty, I'm going to move to this. As the next portion is the applicant. Others may speak in favor. I understand the applicant's here, and would you like to make any comments? Good evening and welcome to the Independent City Council. Nice to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Please let us know who you are and where you live.
My name is Gerald Warner. I'm with Willamette Engineering. I live at 3290 Perkins Street Northeast in Salem, Oregon.
Thank you.
So Doug and I have reviewed the staff report. We generally agree with it. We do want to discuss item number 6, which talked about possibly rotating lot line on parcels 2 and 3. And I guess that may be more of a question, if I could get a little help. We're a little concerned about rotating and getting the lane into lots 4 and 5. What width driveway would we need on the back side of the house to get through there? I haven't had time to research the code, and I was hoping I could get a little help with that.
Common driveways are 20 feet.
But we need 20 feet. And then we need 5 feet setback from the house for the lot 1. So we're a little concerned about rotating that and still getting our 50-foot width for lots 2 and 3. So the reason I bring this up because number 6 gives the option to possibly rotate the lot line. So we'd want to maybe, if that could be conditioned in a way that if it just doesn't work, we could stay with the existing layout. And now, generally agree with the staff report and find it well done. And I'm here for any questions.
Questions for the applicant at this point? Appreciate you taking the time to come and sit with us.
Thank you.
Are there others who wish to speak in favor of the application at this point? I don't see anybody jumping up, so I'm following my script. It's a state mandated script, so I'm following. Are there anybody with neutral testimony? Okay, I don't see anybody jumping up on that. Those opposed may now speak, and the appellant, I think that's you. And take the time you need to share with us what you'd like to share with us, please. And let us know who you are first. Thank you.
So my name is Amanda Sloan and I live at 445 South 7th Street here in Independence. So the staff report addressed some of the things I'm going to talk about. I'm just going to read through, but I think there was some things that were presented that were a little bit different from the staff report. Specifically the issue of definitions. And I think it's really important because even though, can I call you Fred? I do want Mr. Vander. Fred mentioned that the HB 2001 really is an issue here. The staff report uses it to respond to almost every section of the appeal. Like they use it as a response to the different things that we put up about density and about the type of housing that is being proposed. The use of the word townhouse and duplex keeps getting interchanged, right? We even heard in this meeting that it was referred to as townhouses, but the proposal has the word duplex. And I think it's important that the distinction be made clearly because in our own residential code and HB 2001 clearly defines townhouses and duplexes as 2 separate things. And Fred did mention that. Fred mentioned that the duplex is one lot and a townhouse is a separate lot. And I think that's our biggest problem is that this word has been moved interchangeably. And when we've been approaching staff to ask about the appeal process, because we're not developers, we're not lawyers, we're average citizens, we were told repeatedly, well, they'll just put duplexes up. They'll just put duplexes up. And so I think that it's important that if these are going to be townhouses, that the plan that's being approved says townhouses. So it can't be changed to a duplex later. Like I think that those terms and those definitions should be clearly labeled on the plan. Because per HB 2001 and per our own city code, there is a distinction between those 2 types of housing. And Fred, I think again, kind of agreed with that. He showed the difference in definition. And I think that the word interchangeably has been used to create this kind of like a moving target for those of us that have been trying to address this in our neighborhood. The document that Fred asked about, the Q7, the document, and I apologize that when it was typed out, it wasn't clear. It's the interpretation and implementation of HB 2001 document provided by the state. So like when we researched, because like you can't read an entire piece of legislation that I'm pretty sure is really long. We read what the state said what the state put out is kind of like the frequently asked questions or questions that must have been asked by city governments. And so that's what that document is referencing. And that document, again, defines townhouses and duplexes separately. In Q44 of that document, and I apologize, that's how it labels it, is like question 44. It says that the definition of townhouses set forth by HB 21 specifies that it be just how we define it, individual lots, whereas duplexes are separate lots. And so we were just confused that if they're not duplexes, why HB 2001 was being used so much in the staff report to apply, like to reply to our appeal. If they're not duplexes, then HB 2001 wouldn't apply. So why is it being stated? We think that it's being stated in kind of a, I don't know how like politically correct term, almost like a threat. Like that's what it felt like when we're having kind of like, well, they're just going to do this, so you better not, like, appealing it would be no point. And so because they're just going to put these duplexes and it's just going to be rentals and that's it. So I think that that creates a lot of confusion when we look at the staff report and our appeal and how we were going to respond to it. So we would hope that that would be something that the city council would require the applicant to clarify exactly what type of buildings these are. The second issue in the staff reports is their interpretation of it. On the same document, what we brought up in Q7, it states that the city may require duplexes to meet minimum sizes, width, setbacks, etc. So what Fred quoted was the very first part of that, saying that about non-conforming lots. Like someone asked about non-conforming lots, and whoever wrote the bill responded that the cities can require all these duplexes or townhouses. Like if they do end up making these duplexes in 3 lots instead of 5, they still have to abide by all of our setbacks and building code standards. Like they don't just get to skip around that. I know that Fred has mentioned before that like the section 19 will be, subchapter 19 will be eventually addressed. But I think our argument is that there's no way for it to be addressed under the current plan and how it's being brought up, because it deals with those setbacks. And so again, I don't think that HB 2001 is kind of a catch-all in response to this, because even if they, like I said, even if they decide to, the city can still require all of those building setback standards, and we're going to show that it won't be able to meet any of that. And we think that it's really like, if they're going to approve the plan, but the plan can never meet these building codes, it seems like almost like a backwards way of approving the plans. And I get that that's a current law, but that might be something that the city council and the planning commission might want to review, that if the buildings can never meet that should be a reason for why an applicant should have to prove that it should be able to meet those further steps, specifically setbacks, like measurements. Like that's something that you can usually show on a map without having to like show floor plans. So these buildings can't and don't meet the minimum requirements of our code. So Fred already addressed the main issue that we had with the lots not meeting the correct measurements. The fact is that if that, like, the labeling of them is wrong, the numbers are wrong, we're kind of wondering what are the actual measurements. We would ask you to reject it so that it's resubmitted with the correct measurements, so that when we're looking at, you know, how to appeal decisions, that we actually have the accurate information in front of us as community members. And then 2, like the fact is that every parcel would need to be adjusted. Where is the 10 feet being labeled? Like we're not sure. And so like when we're kind of following our appeal, like for them to just say, well, they'll make sure it's correct. When we're trying to file our appeal, like we don't know what that is going to look like. And so we'd ask that you would reject it simply on that basis, and that it's reproposed with the correct measurements. And then we can, you know, go through this process where we can see that it's actually going to meet those requirements. Because whenever these things are done, they're put for a public hearing for a reason, because the public is allowed to have input as a part of the democratic process. The minimum setback of the 5-foot setback is not going to, the second problem with this drawing, I apologize, is that it's not to scale. Kathy Robinson is going to get up at some point, make a public comment on this, and she's going to show you the actual scale model of what this parcel looks like, and that there's more measurements that are incorrect. And the simple fact is that, again, it brings up, if this plan, right, if the measurements are not correct and don't actually reflect the lot size and how lots are going to be developed, it should be rejected, and it should be submitted correctly in order for it to be approved. So, and there's their parcel 1 is actually 83 feet long and parcel 2 would be 61 feet long for the measurements, again, to meet those kind of requirements. And so any adjustments that are going to be made to, like they said, well, we'll just figure out where that 10 feet got mismanaged, right? It's going to affect all of the 5-foot setbacks. These lots are pretty much right on top of each other. There is no wiggle room. So even a change by a foot will change whether or not they're able to meet all of the setback requirements and the driveway minimums. The minimum setback and 5-foot adjustment is not met between parcel 1 and parcel 4. So Fred already agreed that parcel 1 has a new carport that's actually on this 5-foot setback, which means that it's actually like in the area where there should be no property, like there should be no dwelling. So that's a problem. According to the code, there's supposed to be a 5-foot setback from the property line and any dwelling. The structure is in that 5-foot setback. Furthermore, the carport remains, it'll be, if the carport does remain, it'll be inches within the house. So it'll be like pretty much touching the house, right? If you're gonna build it exactly the 5 feet from the property line. And if the 5-foot setback is added, in parcel 4, right, if that 5-foot setback is actually accurately shown, it's to be 5 feet from parcel 4 and 5 feet from parcel 1, then parcel 4 is going to have a hard time to meet again, those basic building standards and basic square footage of that, right? Like if you shift it 5 feet, then parcel 4 is no longer going to be 2,500 square feet. The low density zone. So this was brought up by Fred, and I don't think that we actually got the planning commission's report. So I do apologize that there's something in there that I'm not going to address. So the goal of this is to protect housing zones, right? We have housing zones. During the staff report here in the meeting, it was mentioned that the planning commission essentially almost seems like they made a unilateral decision as unelected officials to ignore the zoning map that is on the city's website, right? We have a zoning website that has low and medium and high density. And if that's the case, like if they have the power to do that, they have the power to change the zoning, then why wasn't it codified? Why wasn't it brought to the council to be legislated, right? When the garage change was made to the code, it was brought before the city council and voted on twice. Why wasn't the same thing done with the zoning law? Why is it that with some codes, you all get to vote and have a say, but with other codes, when it pertains to the zoning and maps of our city, right, which are public information, the zoning commission gets to decide to ignore those or reinterpret those without any say from elected officials, right? The planning commission is appointed and the staff that work that are, hired by the city. They're not elected officials. And so therefore I think it is undemocratic for them to make these unilateral decisions without there being some sort of, just like with the garage thing, it should have been brought to the city council to legislate and then change the code online, right? Because that's what we're using. We're using the code that is on the city's website. Why wasn't it changed? If that actually happened. And if it needs to happen, right? If it needs to happen to address the housing needs in the state and in the city, then why is it not being brought to the legislative body? Why is it not being codified? Why is it not being updated and changed? Because then at that point, we have no argument to make, right? Like if it's being changed and you all have voted on it and the people that vote you in have had a say or have expressed their interest, then at that point it's part of the democratic process. But I feel like their answer to it shows how undemocratic the process is currently at. And that's obviously an address to like what was some of the things that were mentioned today in the meeting. There are very few low density housing areas left in Independence. There's more medium and high density housing than low density. And again, if they're wanting to change the zoning because we need houses, then again, it should be brought to the council. So the street facing and sidewalk access. So part of what Fred read you from subsection 19, section E, didn't read the whole rest of it. On the bottom part talks about the fact that you have to have 20 feet maximum between the entrance to the sidewalk, right? And that is to increase pedestrian access to the streets. Currently that back corner lot is over 100 feet, right? I can't read the measurements and I apologize, I didn't write down. So it means that there is not 20 feet from the entrance to the main street, which would be East Street. It's almost 4 times as much of that, right? And our subsection 19 states clear objectives as to why these standards were put in. They were put in to have street-facing homes for eyes on the street, for safety and security of our neighborhood, right? And we see that, right? The reason why we know there's drag racing, the reason why we know that there's issues that people are bringing up is because when that happens, you look out your window and you can see the street, opposed to looking at someone's garage, right? There was a reason why when the code was written, that standard was put in place to promote the safety of a small town. And also was to promote accessibility so that when you're walking, like a kid walking to school should have easy access to a street in order to get to school and shouldn't have to walk an extra distance. Or an elderly person, like they mentioned, these homes could be used by empty nesters or elderly people. Well, now they're 100 feet away from the closest sidewalk, or they have to walk through someone else's property in order to get to, and that's more than 20 feet. Again, it prevents accessibility to that back lot and does not promote pedestrian traffic, which is the intention of that code itself in subsection E of, subchapter 19, section E. They give two solutions to this, and they say this is where they bring up like the rotating the building, well, essentially saying, well, it's better this way. Again, like if it's not code, then why is it being allowed? Why are we saying that sometimes developers have to abide by the code and sometimes they don't? And their only two options are like, well, this would be worse if we did this, and this would be worse if we did this. The third option is to reject it and actually make them build houses that follow the code. That would be the third solution. Residential building standards in Appendix 3, again, to enhance community livability. And I know that that's not part of the code, right? But that was the vision of the city, was to increase livability. And that brings me to our one of our last points, and that is traffic. Currently, the infrastructure on 7th Street, you guys know, you live there. Like, it doesn't handle the traffic, right? And I get that, like they said, it's only 4 trips. At a previous city council meeting, the staff reported that the average home in Independence is 2.89 people. It means on average, probably have 2 people driving there, maybe even 3, right? Especially if you have college students who are, or people that are renting or cohabitating to be able to afford these houses. That's 2 cars, which means that there's 4 houses, that's 8 cars driving in addition to the other 10 people that are already living on East Street, right? They're not talking about the fact that that street dead ends. Like, it doesn't really show it in that picture, but it dead ends into the creek, right? There are houses all around there that their only point of access to 7th Street is a very tiny East Street. I don't know if you've ever driven on East Street, but it's barely big enough to hold 2 cars passing each other if there's cars parked on the street, right? So you're gonna have that many more people, and you're telling me that that doesn't warrant a traffic impact analysis. So what, the people that live on these small residential streets don't deserve to have livability and be able to like park and leave their houses. What it also doesn't look at is just the practicality. And I get that this might not necessarily be codified, but I think it's important to understand when we look at livability. Trash day. How many more trash cans is that? That's 8. They can't put it on the street because the average width of a fire truck or an ambulance is 8 feet. The average width of our trash cans is about 2 feet. So if you have 1 on each side, you can't fit a ambulance or a fire truck down that last bit, right? It's 12 feet at the very end. So what's probably going to happen is the trash cans, trash trucks probably can't get down. So they're going to require probably all of those people to put their trash cans out on East Street, which means that now there's no parking, right? The city council just voted to remove the garage standard if there could be street parking. How is there ever going to be any street parking on East Street on a Tuesday or a Monday night? Because not only are all of those people going to be dumping out, but all of the pre-existing homes, there's 5 homes already pre-existing on East Street that are going to be putting their trash cans out there, right? Like, it doesn't promote livability. And they can't guarantee things that are being changed in the code after this appeal, right? Like the appeal was filed before the garage thing was voted on. Subchapter 9019, there's no reverse strips or blocks. There's things that are, there's a lot of things in there that like the staff report says, well, we don't have to have them, but we think that that decreases the safety in the area. We feel it's irresponsible again to say that like, well, we'll worry about the other half of the code when the project's approved. But we've proven that the staff report admits in 8, 9, 7, or not, sorry, 8, 9, and 10, 3, Fred admits in the meeting that they will never be able to, like, we are right. They have not met and they cannot meet that code. And if the project can't meet the minimum requirements in the further steps, then why would it ever be approved, right? And do we get a say in those later steps to bring up these complaints? Or is it like the project gets approved, that's it, we're no longer involved, the planning commission and staff get to make all these decisions unilaterally about how the code is applied? And again, we don't think that that's very democratic. It creates a logistical nightmare to enforce codes sometimes, but ignore it others. Some people get to live in homes that meet the codes and other people don't. Which people get to get a quality of life of enhanced livability standards and who doesn't? This project has been referred to by members of staff and the planning commission as affordable housing meant to help address a history of housing discrimination. So the solution is to give housing that is subpar compared to the existing homes and does not meet the current code per the City of Independence. That doesn't really seem to be like a solution to me. As a city council, you're elected to uphold the rules this community has created. The codes exist for a reason, to preserve the safety and livability of the community. Often this council states that they can go back and change it later, or that if they approve it now, they can change it later. But if you allow this to happen, it can't be undone. Otherwise, you will have non-conforming lots, which would be impossible to rebuild. You can't go back and say, no, we're not going to do this, right? Because it's already been approved. We're asking the council to please ensure that the codes are met and that dangerous precedents that are undemocratic are not set. Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Questions?
apologize that it was long-winded.
It's okay. And if you need to turn a written comment in, you can work with Amanda and she can make sure that goes in the record. Are there questions from the appellant?
I have questions for staff, but I'll hold off.
Okay, yeah, we'll have staff a little later on. Okay, thank you. Other people who would like to speak opposed to this, and I think, please come over. We're in the 3-minute rule now, but please come forward. Sure.
I think we have to stand over here so that everyone can see it.
If you could, stand on the side here.
Yeah.
So then, because actually we're the people having to make the decision here, so.
So right up there, can everybody see that? Okay, this is, let me see, let's put it this way. Okay. This is 7th Street and this is E Street, and this represents the line to the concrete of the sidewalk. This is in real time. This is actually each quarter of an inch square represents 1 square foot. And this is actually how it is. This house is the existing house that kind of dictates how everything else goes. This is actually from the foundation to the concrete of the side. I'm sorry, I'm gonna wait.
You're okay, you're doing fine.
Okay, it's 25.5 feet, it's not 24. Up here is 29, not 30. And then it says we have to have 15 feet from here to here, which actually goes to this line. So this is actually 83 feet. Then over here, well, it says that that's 28.5 and that's 28.5, which brings it over to here. This is the line where the posts go down to hold the carport up. And if they're planning on tearing it down, it's a shame because they just put a new roof on it and a lot of new lumber up in here. But if that's what's happening, I guess that's what's happening. But anyhow, by that little drawing that we're looking at over there, this is how they say it goes. But when we get over to real time, and measuring it,
A little help there.
There we go. Hold it up like that.
Thank you.
Now, this is how it really looks. This is the existing house. This is the actual carport. Here's the posts, but this is the property line running through here. So are they gonna cut that all off? And then this is, is this the 5-foot setback here into the deeper into the driveway? And this is the 5-foot setback to where it gets built? Or are they gonna keep this and say, well, this is like a fence line? So then they have another 5-foot setback over here? Or to get this 5,000 square feet, which would be divided in half 2,500. If this is actually 28.5 plus 28.5, and this is actually the line, it has to come all the way down to here at, wait, I can't see it. Has to come down to here. So that comes into this lot. Oh, there it is. And then you have another 5-foot setback before you hit a building. So this just really did something funny to this lot. But if this has to go this way anymore, and you can go that way, but however, every time you push it this way, it pushes it down farther this way. And then this is the size of my kind of little minivan. And here's all the parking. And the fire marshal says you've got to have 20 feet going through here. So 15 feet off the existing house's foundation, and then 5-foot setback off of here, which really adjusted it down this way about a foot. And there you go. And then here's everybody parking. And then let's say you're gonna cut this off and get rid of it. Okay, so this is part of this house. And so here's this little skinny driveway, and then this must be, the concrete goes up there. Maybe they're gonna cut the concrete off, because this actually goes into that house, that concrete, or this little wooden posts that go there. So if they're gonna change it and get it more that way, it just doesn't fit. And this is just a nightmare of, you know, in and out. This got smaller. What's to prevent these guys? If these guys are gone, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna go through all this to get out there. I'm just gonna go out their driveway. It's like, what's the point? But
So your contention is, if I'm trying to summarize here as the time elongates, is that according to your figuring, it doesn't fit.
I measured it 4 times plus
Okay.
with 100-foot tape. So
So
if this is gonna have, if it's gonna go here, and then we have an additional 5-foot setback, and then a 5-foot setback, or can this be a fence line and they can put a fence in, or it's just that this keeps getting longer this way and narrower that way, or it's just this way, and it's just this, all this light blue is just plain concrete.
thank you for providing a map, and thank you for sharing. And I take it you're Kathy Robin.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Kathy Robbins.
I have your, that's right. I have your tag here. And so thank you for sharing with us tonight.
Thank you.
Are there other people who are here to speak in opposition?
I just want to clarify that's entered in the record, correct? So that stays with the city?
Oh, you want it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please. There you go. Thank you for pointing that out. Okay, since there's nobody else to speak in opposition, the next thing is city staff's summary and response to public testimony.
Right, I will try my best. I tried to write notes. We'll see how well I do actually remembering everything. So townhouse and duplex used interchangeably. Yes, we have talked a lot about duplexes, and we have talked about the reality that if 3 5,000 square foot lots are created, they could do a duplex on every single one. The planning commission and staff felt that in this case, having individually owned townhouses was a better approach, because it gives folks other ownership options. There was a quote that I'm sorry, where is she? What, I can't remember her name, but she mentioned something about affordable housing meant to address discrimination. I never said that, and I don't know who exactly.
No, thank you.
So I don't know where that was from. Have the plan say townhouses. This is when we look at conditions that have been suggested. The conditions specifically talk about townhouses, right? No, condition 15, no building permit will be allowed for four smaller lots within the subdivision unless the homes are townhouse / row house style attached housing. That's specific. One thing that I think has been kind of confusing about this, and I mean, we have been referring to this image a lot. What I want you folks to understand is, again, this is just a depiction of how these lots might be built. This does not represent what is actually going to get built on the lot. We have no way specifically to say what these houses are going to look like because we don't do that at this phase. Typically, it goes land use approval, engineering, where they start forking out the money, and then building the houses on the lot. At the time when the lots are there, then we start getting building permits. The building permits absolutely have to meet the lot size requirements. So it's 2,500 square feet. It's going to have to be an attached townhouse. It's going to need a 15-foot front yard setback. It's going to need 5-foot side yard setbacks. All of those things are absolutely required for the development. There was a statement about ignoring the zoning map, and I just want to make clear, reiterate again, do we have the zoning map? This is the zoning map for the city of Independence. The property is, I don't know, it's about right here. I can't quite see it. Anyways, it's in the low density residential zone. The point that I was making is since 2010, minimum lot sizes for townhouse / row house style houses have been 2,500 square feet since 2010 in that zone on corner lots. That's been allowed in the zone. There was a mention about an undemocratic development code change. You folks saw the garage requirements, and I apologize, those garage requirements haven't been updated on the website yet. We try and do that as quick as possible, but I mean, it's a department of one, right? So I apologize for that.
I don't think she ever referenced.
Let's go ahead and let the staff finish their report.
It was something about something online. Also, I'll just say that the planning commission in no way ignored the zoning map. It took the zoning map, it took the uses that applied in the zone, just like you folks do, and it said, this is an attached row house / townhouse on a corner lot. This is an approved use in this zone. There was something about residential design standards subsection E again. Can you pull that up again, Jason? Let's just look at what that specifically says. No, wrong one. Yep. So right there is primary pedestrian entrances shall connect to the sidewalk via a straight path that is a minimum of 5 feet wide, where there is a continuous paved connection between the sidewalk and the front entrance. And if the driveway is within 20 feet of the front door, the driveway may be used to meet this standard. It specifically says that a driveway may be used to make that connection. This proposal would use a driveway to help make the connection to that back lot. There was the statement that there's that staff provided 2 options, either rotate or keep it as is. They suggested a third option, which was reject the proposal. Again, one of the things that Carrie mentioned was that you can't be able to apply a clear criteria that can be met and then reject a proposal. So in this case, staff sees a clear criteria that could be applied if you folks chose. A clear condition that could be applied. That condition would be to rotate those lots 90 degrees, right? There was a bunch of stuff mentioned about exact setbacks and all of that sort of stuff. If the council would like, the council could add the condition that 5-foot side yard setback be applied from the existing structure to the created lot. That could be a condition, but I mean, it is within our we will apply that anyways, but. Yeah, okay.
Thank you for the clarification on that. Appreciate that.
Oh yeah, and we have talked with the fire marshal about this project, and his concerns have been addressed. He has been participating in this whole process. So I think that's basically everything. I don't know, are there any?
Can I just chime in and just add a couple more points? That
Please do.
Dovetail with Fred's. So regarding the first point of clarifying between duplexes and townhouses, the application fees for a subdivision, you're requested to create lines.
Carrie, can you pull the mic towards you?
Yes, please.
Thanks, sorry about that. So the application is to create the lines that would be utilized by those townhouses. HB 2001, let's just be clear, doesn't apply. It doesn't apply. It's not applicable criteria. And so the fact that it's been raised is only to explain what could happen in the event that this application is denied. The Planning Commission, so there was a lot of the democracy talk was that the Planning Commission is making decisions based on the adopted code that they're not authorized to make, and that they should be, those interpretations should be codified. But it actually, the development code specifically delegates to the Planning Commission. You've asked them, please interpret our code. So to the extent that there are conflicting provisions, you've asked the Planning Commission by code, do this for us. If you want to change that, you could, but not now. That would have to be an amendment later. And then, of course, if their interpretations are something you want to incorporate into the code moving forward, again, that would be a legislative process that could be incorporated moving forward. But right now, you've asked the Planning Commission by code to interpret the development code for you. So it's legit for them to be doing that. There was some conversation about transportation. I do believe the Public Works Director addressed that really adequately and aptly, but we don't have any evidence before us to indicate that the thresholds that would require a transportation, a TIA impact analysis, there's no evidence to require it. We just can't. And speculation is makes sense, but it doesn't contravene the evidence that the planning, that the Public Works Director made his interpretation on. And then some points were raised. Oh, right, some points were raised about livability that are, again, items that could be addressed by future amendments, but they aren't actually applicable criteria right now for the subdivision application that's before you. Sorry, tried to be really quick.
That's fine. Okay, the next thing that's on our script here is that the applicant has a chance to make rebuttal, and then there'll be further questions from City Council after, and that can be directed to staff. So does the applicant wish to say anything else? Okay. Good afternoon, and identify yourself for us.
I'm Sean, the applicant, last name Duggar from Salem. I'm gonna make my portion of it really short and sweet. Bottom line is we have an existing house on a 0.42. We can, without any of this, I guess pretty much have 3 duplexes. I chose to not do that for home ownership, switching out tenants for homeowners. And what that means is you have tax lots. So you're having individual tax lots, where with duplexes, you can have one owner, one tax lot. Here we have individual tax lots that could be sold off, bringing in owners.
Thank you. Sir?
Gerald Warner again.
Yep.
Yeah, I just want to say a couple of times, just to mention again, there were a couple dimensions incorrect, but the lot arrangement does match what we're planning. And the carport will be removed. because it is going through a lot line. I guess for my own benefit, I'd like to say I did not prepare that site plan. But, we have, and I wanted to say for zoning, it was pretty well addressed already, but we do rely a lot, mostly on the city's interpretation of the zoning. That was a concern of some of the citizens, and I just want to mention that. And that's all we have at the moment. Any questions?
I have a question.
Counselor Roden.
Do you hear the concerns of the neighbors surrounding this property? And does that change your opinion on this at all? That it's just not welcome?
I hear these comments many times. I've been developing for up to 20 years, engineering development, and I hear it many times. Many people are concerned. They're concerned about parking. They're concerned about more people, but I don't know. The cities are growing. People are coming in.
Would you want
So
this in
am I
your backyard?
concerned? Am I concerned? I don't know. Go ahead.
Would you want this in your backyard?
Can't have it in my backyard. I'm not zoned that way.
There you go. Additional questions? Okay, please.
I think staff answered most of the questions I had.
So let's, if we don't need the.
Never mind, no. I guess staff questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. And so we're now going into further questions from the council. So if you have anything for staff, go ahead, Councilor Court.
Yeah, Fred, I don't know if your sub 19 comment covered this, but Amanda brought up a concern about pedestrian access from that back unit. Can you talk a little bit about how that's going to happen?
Yeah, so specifically it's addressed in that E right there. So it says primary pedestrian shall connect to the sidewalk via a straight path that is a minimum of 5 feet wide where there is a continuous paved connection, like a driveway between the sidewalk and the front entrance. And if the driveway is within 20 feet of the door, the driveway may be used to meet that standard.
Yeah.
We can read number 5.
Yep.
The house is facing the street, there's a specific part of that that says it has to be 1 feet.
So I think you're thinking right underneath it where it mentions alternatively. So we can see, go up to 3. It says alternatively, which means perhaps a different way, may be oriented to a side yard when a direct pedestrian walkway, a minimum of 5 feet wide, is provided between the building entrance and the street. In this case, at least one entrance shall be provided not more than 20 feet from the closest sidewalk or street.
Okay, thank you. Do you have additional questions?
Realizing that that picture is just a conceptualization of what's going to go on that lot. Do you have any concerns about residents in that back portion of it being able to get to the sidewalk or get to the street? Are there any concerns at all?
I don't know, and again, specifically, this is, I'm sorry, I'm going back to the whole duplex thing. If this was a duplex, we would allow this, right? We would allow this complete, the same building arrangement. So that's why conceptually it's easy for me to think the only difference is the property line, right? So if we would allow a duplex to do it, then why wouldn't we allow a townhouse to do it? The eyes on the street and stuff like that, this project will have, I don't know, it will promote eyes on the street. The buildings will be oriented to, I think a lot of what this section is talking about, where it's talking about purpose and eyes on the street and community policing and all of that sort of stuff, like it talks about in the purpose statement, promote community safety for neighborhood streets and front yards by providing eyes on the street. This development will have eyes on the street out, and I'm sure that the folks in the development too will be able to like see what's going on as well. So I don't know. I don't specifically have any concerns, given that.
Additional questions for staff at this point?
Yes.
Please, Counselor Morton.
Chief Mason, as law enforcement, do you have any concerns about safety issues with this particular design that's been presented to us? I have a couple more. First, and on that alternative one about no more than 20 feet from the closest sidewalk to the street, does that apply as a regulation that must govern this particular piece of property?
Well, I didn't apply these originally to these criteria to the subdivision because specifically this pertains to buildings. This pertains to new developments on a lot. So I didn't specifically address subchapter 19.
Is that something that you will address when it comes time for building permits?
We will make sure that it has a driveway to the door and that there's a walkway from the driveway to the door. Yeah, absolutely.
And finally, I do understand that this drawing or the schematic is as flawed as it may be, is presented as a concept. That's rather than an accurate, to absolute scale and all the things finalized, because you have to get the building permits before you can draw something like that. And for me, it's very hard to draw the difference between subjective and objective, but I'm trying to look at this in the most objective way, and objectivity says that schematic is a concept.
Okay. What, for Councilor Roden with question?
My question to staff is, because there are so many questions now, and I know Fred, you did a great job in trying to write down everything that was brought up by the appellate. Thank you. Can we curb this? Can we table this for 180 days and get all of our ducks in a line, get all of, our clear definitions, setbacks addressed, prove our setbacks, get, definitions and language and measurements all clear? Can I put a motion forth right now to table this for 180 days, clear everything up so that we're making not an expeditious decision, but we're making a confident, clear decision on where we go with this?
Fortunately, no. You have to make an expeditious decision on it. You have 120 days from the day that an application is considered complete to make a decision on an application.
What is that day?
What is that day? If the application was declared complete on, I think I said June 7th.
It's frustrating because we were just getting all this more information 2 hours before, the city council meeting. And
so let's go ahead and keep the question to the staff. And so what you're basically saying is the clock began whenever the application, and that's a state law, if I recall correctly.
That's correct. And what we would say is, if there's good ways that you can condition the application to address your concerns, you can feel free to condition the application.
but how do we do that in the time frame you've given us? How do we get all these conditions at 4 p.m. on the day we're supposed to make the decision, and then come back with a competent list of conditions to be adequate representation for our constituency and be good stewards of our city? How can we do that as a council?
So you want to respond to that?
You get paid the big bucks. Sorry, but it's an uncomfortable position the legislature has placed us in. There are time constraints on these types of decisions. It's one of the reasons that familiarizing yourself with the record in advance is helpful. I know that you didn't have that opportunity. I do have to say that the latest submission from the appellant technically shouldn't have been accepted. So what was emailed to you, it needs to be all of the appellant's information needs to be included with its appeal, all of the bases for its argument. And so to the extent that you're being peppered with stuff at the last minute that you don't feel like you can absorb, well, you have a staff report, you know that the criteria has been addressed. There's conditions that are being suggested by your professional staff that address that. And if you didn't hear anything tonight that pertains to applicable criteria that we've offered a condition, it probably isn't an appropriate condition.
But it was the staff conditions that were omitted, correct?
Staff conditions are listed 1 through 18.
So yeah, so I mean, that's absolutely unfortunate, like that, the appeal staff report didn't get to you folks. I will say that the applicant and the appellant both had the staff report, last week, 7 days in advance when I'm required to get it done by. So, I apologize that didn't get to you.
Do you see my frustration is how do we make conditions on a staff report? I mean, you mentioned how it was, they should have had their ducks in a line when the city didn't even have their ducks in a line. So I mean, how do we do this?
Well, I actually don't understand the question, because you have a decision and a motion suggested. You have staff's recommended conditions to meet applicable criteria. Nothing has, in my opinion, I haven't heard anything tonight that would require the imposition of more conditions than staff is already recommending.
So here's where we're gonna go.
Can I ask a question?
Please do.
So I guess maybe it's more of a procedural question, but it seems like a lot of the arguments I heard tonight were talking about setbacks, talking about this doesn't fit on the property. And as I understand it, we're drawing the lines tonight. And now the applicant will spend a ton of money to have very detailed surveyed drawings done, calculate exactly where all this is. They're gonna bring it to the city. The city's gonna say, no, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. Go back and redraw them as we do with all our developments. That's the next step, correct? And that's where most of these arguments can be dealt with, and there's really not any conditions we need to add to that. Is that kind of the summary?
That's correct, and that's why conditions like, hey, every townhouse lot has to be at least 2,500 square feet. I mean, stuff like that applies at that point. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I don't see any more questions for staff at this point. So without objection, I'm going to close the hearing. Okay, we're now going to go into, we have deliberations and decisions.
Just close the hearing and the record.
Excuse me, and the record. Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification. We are now in discussion, and we can discuss and we can decide on action.
When's the last day to make this decision? I haven't got that yet.
And council would have to be convened to make that decision, correct? So it could mean another council meeting.
Well, we don't know the date yet, so we have no idea.
People are counting.
October 5th, according to Google.
Good old Google.
Okay, October 5.
You want to wait?
I think we can get this done. It's, is there a discussion? I think there's been, some implications here, but we can, we can suggest action, we can talk. What do people want to do?
Well, I guess I just want to share that as someone who's spent a number of years on the planning commission, I understand that sometimes our emotions, our likes, our dislikes, try to get the better of us. But the task before us tonight is simply, do we allow, and I'm sorry, your name escaped me, sir, to draw these lines and create purchasing opportunities, or do we not? That is all we're considering. Design standards will be down the road. All of our code, all of our setbacks, all of that will have to be met when we get to those design phases. We have all of the conditions that staff has proposed. After reading through those, I can't think of anything more to add. And I would just like to move to, I guess, support the Planning Commission's decision as conditioned in our packet.
I have,
Oh, do we
staff
have-
provided a motion there.
Thank you, staff. So I would move to uphold the decision of the Planning Commission on the proposed subdivision file number SUB 2022-01 and adopt the findings and conditions of approval set forth in the 9/27/2022 staff report as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Core. We can now have discussion.
Does that include rotating that one?
Include what?
It does not.
Rotating, they were talking about how making that a requirement. Is that something that we discussed or not?
No, I don't think there was,
Just that I moved it as submitted.
yeah, and that wasn't with the 90-degree rotation, because I think, Councilor Takis, please.
So just as a comment, I would say I would not support the 90-degree rotation if that were submitted. But I was wondering about the condition 17 require that all the lots have 2,500 square feet. I'm just throwing that out for consideration as a possible amendment to your motion. That's not included, isn't that?
Right, let me get a clarification. Was that the suggestion that staff had made also?
Yes.
Is that okay with everybody? Can we, can we include the 25? Is everybody okay with including the 25 without objection?
Brings us in even closer to our
Okay,
zoning.
so
and
without
conditions.
objection, that's added to the motion. Motion,
Can we take a break just for a minute to look over the conditions instead of just hopping to 17 to see which ones we want to go through then? If we're going to accept this, can we look?
I
at
think we already
conditions?
went through them.
Well, then I'd like to look at condition 7 and ask a question on it. Does all utilities for subdivisions shall be installed below underground? Does that include electrical? So we can have that condition put in there so that we don't have electrical and all these things above ground.
So that's phase 2.
And then also on, so for condition 17, he says that that townhouse lots are at least 2,500 square feet each as a part of the plot for the property. Can we also include that no more than 40% of the land be developed? And that can be a condition to this as well.
That's, I mean, we do that like literally every day. I mean, the guys in Brandy Meadows will tell you, we turn back applications for exceeding 40% lot coverage all the time.
Okay.
And Fred,
Because in our
that
development
comes at the design phase, yes?
It does.
Okay. So I guess I would like to call the question regarding the lot division that is before us tonight.
Okay, we have a motion. Does anybody object to moving to make a decision on this?
Oh, did we add condition 7 and did we add it to condition 17?
We added condition 17 by consensus. I asked for everybody and everybody said, okay. And so that's, and the motion, the maker of
If
the
I may
motion.
clarify, all the other conditions are already been added.
That are
That's
already
been
there.
approved by the planning
They've
commission.
already been approved. Okay, so without objection, we're gonna move to the decision. All in favor of the motion to uphold the decision of the Planning Commission on the proposed subdivision file number SUB 202201 and adopt the findings and conditions of approval set forth in 09272022. Staff report is presented as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed.
Opposed.
Roden is opposed. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. We're going to take a little halftime here because we have, there is a public hearing coming up later on wastewater transportation development charge methodology and rates. We're taking a 7-minute timeout so we can go to the bathroom.
I like that.
You guys are having too much fun.
Is this gonna be a good movie?
Okay. Okay, we're back in session. Good evening. And excuse me, let me get so I can say what we're doing here. Thank you. Oh, no, I got my wrong piece of paper in front of me. Just a moment. Where is it? There it is. Excuse me. Okay, we're here for a public hearing. I'm going to open a public hearing on wastewater transportation system development charge methodology and rate update. And gentlemen, please.
Thank you. First thing I'm going to do is ask Jason to get rid of everything related to planning. We're going to go right into engineering. He's going to bring up the PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to let Steve Donovan from Donovan Enterprises go over the PowerPoint presentation to discuss the methodology change. But just wanted to mention real quickly, we advertised this on June 22nd. This is all set up by state law. We notified the folks who are on our list on June 26th. We posted on the website, we provide a copy at the front counter on the 26th of June. The work session was held with City Council on 7/26. It's basically the same thing. We had set aside comments could be submitted to us so we could get them in the packet, but they had to be in by September 16th. They're not required to be submitted, but in order for us to get them into the packet, we set that deadline. They can submit comments written and oral in this hearing at the night of the hearing, so that's not a problem. With that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Steve. I'll be available to answer any questions after the PowerPoint along with Steve, and that at the end of the public hearing, if you have any additional questions for me, I'll be available.
And before I let you get into that, I neglected to do one line on my script here, so I have to ask, do any counselors wish to declare any biases or ex parte context related to the public hearing on the SDC methodology and rates? Okay, nobody wants to build a sewer, wants to own their own personal sewer system. So we're okay with that. Please continue. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Good evening, Steve Donovan, 9600 Southwest Oak, Suite 335, Portland, Oregon. We will not have any side yard setbacks involved with this conversation. Bringing the Wayback Machine on July 26th, we did give a work session with you folks. What you're going to see tonight is a refresh of that. And if we can, Jason, let's hop through it. It'll be short, eight slides. We're going to go tick-tock. Tonight's on the policy issues. We're going to talk about SDCs. You currently charge SDCs. You have charged SDCs for many, many years. What we're proposing to do to bring forward to you is a change of the way you calculate SDCs for wastewater and for transportation, and update the rates that you charge. We'll talk about the details of the analysis. Go ahead, you can loop through those buttons there. There we go. So quickly, policy issues relative to SDCs. SDCs are not charged to ratepayers. They are one-time charges on new development. They are created by statute, and they're very structured, both by statute and by your municipal code. You have established a number of things that follow the state code, but in some cases are even more pervasive than the state code. I think the statute is a guiding picture. Your code is the implementation picture. SDCs have an impact on infrastructure development, how you fund it, and it also has an impact on how your community develops. And you're aware of this. You've all talked about this. You struggle with this regularly. Planning Commission, you've had this for years. So you need to strike a balance. Just because we come to you and say, here is what the law says is the maximum you can charge for a system development charge on new development, does not necessarily mean that you have to charge that. There are many communities across Oregon that don't charge any SDCs at all. We talked about it at the work session. Your neighbors in Astoria and in Coos Bay, for economic reasons, they're trying to attract development, so they're not not charging SDCs. They're making a conscious decision that their ratepayers will subsidize growth. Go ahead, Jason. For transportation, want to talk about this. You recently completed, you all spent a lot of time on your transportation system plan. That was the guiding document that we used to develop our SDC approach for transportation. We started out first pass, taking the pure recommendations from the master plan, the system plan, and came up with a $26,000 fee for transportation per single family home. And we just said, that's just untenable. So we went through and looped through again on the second pass and made cuts. And then, as you see here on the pass, we assumed that parks could pick up a number of the trails and linear type improvements that were in the plan. The costs don't go away. In our world, infrastructure cost and funding is a zero-sum game. If he doesn't pay for it, you do. So that's the struggle that we have. We can't say the pie is going to grow bigger and everybody's only going to have a little slice. So that's our struggle. Gerald and the engineering team went back and cut back again, and that's how we came up with our proposal to you tonight. For wastewater, the principal driver of all of the SDC increases that we're recommending is wastewater treatment. You're effectively expanding your capacity and increasing the efficiency of your capacity at your wastewater treatment plant. Go ahead, Jason. This oblong on here, really what we're talking about here is raising the SDCs by about $9,000 roughly. And the difference is all explained in our proposal for transportation and for wastewater. We'll be coming back to you in the future for water and for parks and for stormwater at a future date. So once again, the costs aren't going away. We'll be back. Go ahead, Jason. And now just a quick picture of the charts that we showed you here. In this case, water, you're currently charging, to give you a frame of reference relative to your neighbors. You currently charge 2,700 bucks, 2786. You're kind of in the lower end of the pack relative to your neighboring communities in terms of single family charges for water. Go ahead, Jason. For wastewater, we're proposing to go from the current 4,000 up to 9,700. So we are proposing to make a big increase for the relative to your neighboring communities. Across the state, that is not uncommon. I just finished one in the metro area. It's going to go up to $20,000 for single family home. It has no bearing on what we're talking about here, but the numbers are big and they're getting bigger. And this is another struggle for your folks. Tonight, you all talked about we need affordable living wage homes and housing. Well, Steve, you're raising the SDCs. The costs don't go away. So this is the struggle as elected officials and as leaders that you have to deal with. How do we provide affordable housing, yet the cost to provide infrastructure are so abnormally high? Stormwater, you're currently charged my poor eyes, 900. So you're up on the upper end. I have communities that are charging 18,000 right now for stormwater. You're going to find in the future on stormwater that the conditions from regulatory agencies are only going to get stricter for communities over 10,000. Gerald talked about, remember TMDL he talked about? Well, that's going to come back. He's got a tattoo of that, by the way. Go ahead, Jason. Transportation. We're proposing to go from $3,600 to $7,400. That is a number that was predicated on our second loop down. So remember, we started out at over 20 and now we brought it down to 7. Go ahead, Jason. And then parks, you're at 4,300. Once again, if we move projects out of the transportation system plan and put them on the back of parks, we're probably going to see your parks SDC go up in the future as you complete your parks master plans. So options for implementation. Jason. Clearly, you can adopt the SDCs as presented. You can phase them over time. Many communities do that. Take us from here and go up and phase it over time, keeping in mind that any phasing is delaying money that you could have collected now. And then set the SDCs below the level at your judgment of what we're recommending. Or you could do nothing. Do nothing is an action. That's all we've got. Thank you.
Questions for the staff presenters? Counselor Court.
Do you have any anecdotal information to share with us about those communities that allow the ratepayers to carry the load and not do this?
Sure. Let's talk about wastewater. Astoria, sewer bill, monthly sewer bill in Astoria for a single family home is $100. Now, they have a pretty unique situation there. They also have what's called a combined sewer overflow abatement program. So they pay $50 for their regular sewer bill, and they pay another $50 for the abatement. Coos Bay is another one. Their sewer bills are up above $50 a month.
And are they able to maintain their infrastructure upgrades and whatnot with that? Is it enough?
No, none of us are upgrading our infrastructure or keeping our infrastructure standing.
No, but I mean, Coos in Astoria, are they able to do what they need to do with the ratepayers carrying the load? Are they? Is
They're
that process
doing
working
what
on?
they're doing.
Okay, that was what I thought.
Since our sewer and wastewater are combined on one bill, can you give a comparative? How about water and wastewater for Astoria?
Actually, we won't be able to do that because what we have to do is decide what the system development charges are going to be. Once those are set, then we can calculate the sewer fees themselves.
Right,
He
I
talked
get
about
that.
the zero sum game. If
Uh-huh.
you lower the SDCs, that means we come back with higher sewer rates.
I was just
later on.
curious about what the current rates were in Australia, in Astoria for water and wastewater.
I'm sure they can get that to us at our next
I
time.
thought maybe you had it all in your head.
I got a lot of stuff up there, but not that.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, just
I have a question
please
for
do.
Gerald. In your opinion, is there anywhere we could maybe cut some of our spending so that we could focus on, our infrastructure and things like that? I know we have, I think it was 39 million was the budget, I think, over the next 20 years for the sewer system. Is there somewhere that you're noticing when you're looking at things like, hey, you guys, you really should cut back here because we could really use the money in our infrastructure?
The only thing that I've been successful at doing in the past is by making some improvements in key locations. I may be able to defer or push off work on a project where it may be listed as a midterm project, the 6 to 10 years, but through key selection of projects, I'm actually adding some capacity so that project I can slide back in time and it's not up front with a higher rate. That's about the only option that I have to play with. So once the SDCs are adopted, and I'll bring back the full updated CIP, then when you adopt that, I go back to my office and I start staring at the board going, okay, which ones am I going to do first? And what's the benefit and the cost? And what can I stretch out to keep those rates low? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah.
Okay,
Wasn't the answer I wanted, but.
Counselor Roden.
If we agree to the full amount that you're requesting today, does that mean I don't want it to go back to the ratepayers. So are you saying that if we allow this today, in the future, we're going to vote on it again and it could possibly go to the ratepayers? Or if we vote on it, the first thing that you submitted, it would go solely to the developers?
So if you adopt it as proposed, then the developers would be paying their full fair share.
Perfect.
If you
I understand that.
phase it or reduce it, then that cost burden shifts to the ratepayers.
Additional questions for the presenters? I don't see anybody jumping up. I'm going to move to public comment. We have 3 minutes for each of you. And I think Mike Erdman, I think you're the first person up. Thank you for waiting for us this evening. There you go. Good evening and welcome.
Thank you. I'm Mike Erdman of the Home Builders Association of Marion and Polk counties. Our industry is really concerned, of course, with a $9,000 plus increase in the SDC. So a little context is important here. The industry has changed a ton in the last few months. Last year you could get interest rates at 3%, now they're 7%. Folks are now paying 70% more for their mortgage payment just based on the interest rates, and that's changed the market entirely. since just a few months ago. We are in a housing recession for new construction. That's been pronounced nationally. We're seeing it here. We have in the local market, here in Polk counties, building permits are down about 2/3, frankly, from 3 months ago, from what we saw just last month. So it's been a huge drop. Builders are responding, frankly, by cutting back on their commitments. They're not building like they used to. We're seeing that here in Independence. We've got a couple of very large builders that were looking at future projects. They have withdrawn from those commitments just in recent weeks based on the market conditions. Point of all that is that the industry cannot absorb a $9,100 increase in SDCs right now. It is too big of a hit on housing affordability, and it's really going to make a bad situation quite a bit worse. But here's what we're asking, because we understand infrastructure costs money. We understand you got to charge it. What we're asking for is that you phase this in over 4 years. And that's consistent with what other cities have done. Salem, the most recent one, that phased their SDC increase in. And so by doing this increment of over 4 years, for example, you give the market the ability to absorb these fees in a more manageable way. Because if you were to hit us with a $9,100 increase right now, the market can't absorb it. Those can't be passed on. And so what's going to happen, frankly, I think you're putting your existing SDC revenue at risk. Because if that shuts down new construction and folks aren't building at all, then the existing SDC revenues that you would get aren't coming in. And so work with us, I guess, help phase those in over a few years. And I think it makes it in a more manageable situation. It's not a great situation, but it's more manageable. The other thing that I would ask of you is to ask staff over the next couple of weeks to perhaps go back and work with your consultants and take a look at some of the growth versus non-growth allocations on some of the pedestrian and transportation projects. In particular, we've got concerns on the project that would widen the Willamette River Bridge to extend bike lanes on both sides. And our concern there is that 100% of the costs of that project are allocated towards growth. We don't think that's legally defensible. The whole point of SDCs is that you charge growth for its impact and create capacity for growth. And that widening of those bike lanes really is to fix an existing deficiency. Okay, it's a really unsafe bridge to ride a bike across or walk. And so it's not like there's plenty of capacity now and we need more capacity for future growth. It's fixing an existing deficiency and some other projects in there as well. We just ask that you go back and have staff revisit and just make sure those allocations are correct. So I've got just a brief period of time. Just want to summarize, just ask you to work with us. Obviously, we want to keep the industry going. We want to try and get affordable housing here in Independence, but it's just not going to happen if we get saddled with a $9,100 increase all at once. So let's phase that over a few years. It gives us a chance to absorb it a little bit better. Have staff go back and work with the consultant on some of those allocations. And we just appreciate that and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you taking the time. Chet Graham. Good afternoon, or good evening, good night. Welcome.
My name is Chet Graham. I'm a local realtor. I'm involved in the subdivision out here, Brandy Meadows. And Mike's right. We can't absorb such a great SDC increase at one time. In the last 12 weeks, we've sold no homes. There's nothing as far as our traffic. I mean, it has stopped dead. We have finished product and nobody's coming to see him now because of what the market's done. This is a terrible time to try to bring this into the city. And also it doesn't go, the developer's not going to pay it. The builder's not going to pay it. It's going to come down to the home. So the new homeowner is going to have an extra $10,000 to try to be able to afford in this situation. So I'm like saying phasing, I'm saying we need to postpone it until things turn around.
Thank you, appreciate. Larry Dahlke, did you want to speak? Okay, please, because you indicated both ways.
Well, yeah, Larry Dahlke, Salem, 3900 Yola.
I have it.
Anyways, I am a longtime resident of West Salem, and I also spent a lot of time coming over to Independence swimming in my early years. So, but anyways, I'm the developer working with Chet as a realtor at Brandy Meadows. And, we've had our challenges over there already. I just want to make it clear that as a developer, I'm already paying for a bridge tax. I'm paying for off-site improvements. I'm paying for the detention pond. So I wanted to kind of make this stuff clear to everybody. We're doing our share, and then we're creating tax dollars for this city, which you've now got 84. I think Chet and I have developed, I'm sorry, 76 lots so far. So you have that income coming in. We have seen sales drop big time, and we got developers, builders, really quality builders. We're trying to build a quality neighborhood, and we're working on the next phase coming up. And I'm looking at all these costs that we're talking about with Public Works as well as these SDCs. And it makes me feel like, you know, is this the place to come help develop? And I want to be here. I was excited when I started with Chet 4 or 5 years ago. I'm still excited, but I'm seeing some changes that are really affecting my thinking of how far do we go. And I know I've had interest from larger developers looking at wanting to buy our product. But we've also said, you know, we want to keep it to local builders and continue the quality of development that we have put forth here. We've been excited about it. I think what we're doing for the City of Independence is exciting. I get excited myself, Chet is, and I don't know if you guys know that, but we are happy, super happy to be here. So this SDC thing, I think, should be delayed with if you're watching what's going on in this world right now, it's not a time to raise these. And I'm in favor of raising them because I know things cost more, but I think a delay, we won't be ready for the next phase for 2 years. We're hoping to start breaking ground next year. So, you know, starting to raise things just changes things, and you don't want to stunt your growth. You got a good thing going right now in this city, and I mean, people are excited. I'm excited. I drive through the town, love it here, love coming over here for all the events. But this will start changing things if you just give us a $10,000, you know, cost, an additional cost, and I think it should move forward in phases. And so that's about all I got to say. So.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time. Thank you. There's a lady in the back who has her card, and if you just hand that to me. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisa Sanchez. I live at 364 South 4th, and I've been in Independence 4 years now. My parents, who are retired, just recently moved, and we are building an ADU in the backyard so that they can age in place. It's what makes sense for our family. I work in education, they're on fixed income. Economically, especially right now, just makes sense. So to see SDCs are not charged to the rate payer, they are charged to the rate payer. We will pay that extra bit. So just something to consider going forward if we want to encourage our community to provide those multi-generational living situations. This is something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, were you trying to get in? Okay, I'll take your business card in, and if you can manage, and then you can transpose this from. Okay, good evening, Mark. Thank you.
My name is Mark Bybee. I'm with Bybee and Associates out of Salem. I'm a builder, and I've had the pleasure and privilege of building here in Independence. It's been a great experience for me these last couple of years. And I appreciate Larry Dahlke's development here, and he's done a great service to this community. As you are familiar with in the media, they're letting us know that with the increase of interest rates, it's costing more just to get into a house. We have a lot of first-time home buyers and people who want to downsize, or and they're getting hit hard with the interest rates, and to the point where just a $100 or $200 a month is keeping people out of houses, and it's a sad thing. We have fortunately been able to, up until recently, been able to keep the pricing of houses affordable here in Independence. and it does you a good service by increasing your tax base. And I am proud to say that we have brought in, at least the people that I've sold the houses to, are very respectable, reputable people. They're coming from long distances to live here in Independence, and they're very kind and considerate people, and they're a benefit to this community. It's costing us as builders a lot more to build. Material costs are increasing, have increased significantly. When I was paying $19 a sheet for plywood, just a little over a year ago, I'm paying over $45 a sheet for plywood. And labor costs are going up. And I'm struggling as a builder just to keep the costs down so we can keep these houses affordable. We don't want to build houses. I'm sitting on a house right now that hasn't sold. As Chet indicated, things have sort of slowed down lately here, and I'm sure it will sell. But my goal is to keep costs down. Now, from what I can see, City Council, you have three options here. One, you can keep things the way they are and do nothing, and then struggle with how to fund the infrastructure improvements and keep these things going. So you can do nothing, or you can increase the SDCs by $9,500 or $10,000, and eliminate the affordable housing that we're trying to do here. It will go to, we can't pocket this. We can't afford to carry that. And it will go to the ratepayers, because we have to pass it on to them. And it will hit them hard. They'll take one blow at the beginning when they buy their house. They'll have to pay $10,000 more for their house versus carrying it out. So you can increase the rate now significantly and eliminate that potential to continue to build affordable housing. Or number three, you can implement this in phases, put a moratorium on it, or whatever you want to call it, and implement it over the next 6 to 7 years, 8 years. And we can continue to build houses that these people, and believe me, people they're enjoying coming to, they want to move to Independence. I've been building for 30 years now in Salem, and from Salem to Lincoln City to Lebanon, and people want to come here. They're buying these houses as quickly as we can break ground on them. They want to come here.
And we really appreciate that you're doing business in our community. Do you have a final thought here for?
I do. So, or you can implement this over, 4, 5, 6 years, and keep the housing affordable, and we can keep doing what we're doing, and you'd still be able to fund your infrastructure needs.
Thank you.
And I think that might be which would be the easiest thing to do.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I don't see anybody else in the audience that has. Oh, yes, there's somebody on the phone. Go ahead, please.
Good evening, Mary McCardle. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor McCardle and City Council members. My name is Deborah Flagan, and I'm Vice President of Hayden Homes. Hayden Homes is a residential home builder that has been building in the City of Independence for since 2018. We've built just about 100 homes in the City of Independence. And our business model has always been based on bringing a home to market that meets the area median income wage earner, making sure that they can afford it. Currently, we are bringing a home to market at the price point of $374,000. That's in our Liberty Park community. The current area median income in Polk County is $64,000. In March, that family could afford a $400,000 house at 3.25% interest. Today, at 6.75% interest rates, that same family can only afford a $260,000 home. So in turn, the timing of the SDC fee increase compounds the affordability issue for the residents of Independence. And that $9,100 proposed cost increase equates to double that in regards to the price of the home for the customer. And that's largely due to the costs being on a percentage basis based on commissions, finance fees, etc. So our current $375,000 home is going to be increased to $400,000 for the customers. We understand why the increase is being recommended and what the methodology is. And although we're a little bit disappointed that the methodology did not include a tiered consideration for based on square footage, providing a lesser amount for smaller homes and a larger amount for larger homes, which many cities around the states are considering and using as part of their methodology. As a matter of fact, the city of Albany just implemented this as part of their SDC increases. And we do ask that this is something that you do consider in future SDC discussions down the road. Bottom line is that the affordability is the biggest piece of this right now, and we know that it's all about timing. And so we just ask that if you are going to increase the SDC fees today, we ask that it be on a tiered basis and that it comes in on a 4-year time frame. So we can have a few more years to have the interest rates equalize to make up for the wage discrepancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Appreciate it. Anybody else to testify? Seeing nobody jumping up, I'm going to close the public hearing. Now, folks, we only needed to have a public hearing today, and if there's no objection, let's carry over future decisions related to this to the October 11th, 2022 City Council meeting and request staff prepare a resolution for adoption of the sewer and transportation SDCs, where we will have a full discussion about that, and we can make any comments. Yes. Yes, sir.
So you heard some testimony from folks. In order for me to come back prepared at the next meeting, I'm looking for some direction. Is there, hands fly up, do you want me to bring back resolutions that include a phase in over time? Do you want me to bring kind of a mixture of options available to you? Go ahead.
Yes, to the phases.
Okay.
Also,
Is there phases of time or the phases of square footage?
Phases of time and square footage. That's what I was going to get to in my next part of my question. Is there merit to what the Hayden Homes person said?
I haven't actually seen the phasing they're talking about from Albany, but I can look and see what it is. I know that I talked to the city manager about the potential of changing our SDC code, not the methodology, but the code itself, to provide flexibility in the SDCs, that you could charge different tiers in that for different, basically it was a square footage.
Yeah.
But to put that in the municipal code, versus putting it in the SDC. And what it would refer to is a single family home of this square footage would be, 45% of the full charge, and a 4,000 square foot house or whatever that number is would be the full rate.
And I think that information, if you bring that at the next meeting, then we can kind of overlay our concerns about affordable housing on top of that and make a more informed decision.
Okay, and then we'll probably be looking for, do you want it in the SDC resolution, or would you prefer to put it in the code?
We're going to look to some staff direction on which is the best way. Do folks like that, what's being proposed here for chewing on it? Yes,
Options are good.
please.
I would really like it when you do your research to focus on minimizing the impact to existing residents of our community. Because if I'm looking at the math right, this increase of roughly $10,000 would equate to $27 per month increase in someone's mortgage payment if they're buying the house. So I need to be able to look, if we're going to phase it in, and that means we have to put money, get money from people who already live here to make up that difference, I need to know what that money would be, what money that resident would be paying. Does that make sense?
I think it's way more than $27.
Yeah, I think it is too.
I think we're
It's
talking a
closer to
couple
90.
hundred.
I can.
So I'm sure that this will all come back in a staff report on the 11th.
Not the 11th. Just the amount of research that I'm going to have to do. It'll come. I'll let you know later on when it's going to come back.
Know in advance that we appreciate all of the research you are going to do.
Yes, we do.
Just my comment, I'm looking for a delayed start to the SDCs personally because of where we are with real estate. So if it could be something where it's like a 12-month delay and then the phases start type of ideas, kind of what I'm looking at.
I would be really interested in what the implications of that are on some of our major projects, because if we, as was mentioned, we don't want to put this on our own ratepayers, because there are sewer and water and transportation and wastewater things that need to get done, and some of that's going to just have to happen. I think the consultant said the project doesn't go away, and the price tag doesn't go away, and I think that we need to be very, very aware of that. Do you have the direction that you need?
I think so. I took down notes of some of the concerns that were brought forward by the speakers, and I'll try to methodically go through those with responses. This is a policy decision. I'm going to tell you the pluses and minuses, but I'm not going to tell you what to do.
I'm going to look at city staff for a second here. Is the 11th too early? Is that too fast to be realistically allow staff to follow up on what we just talked about?
Yeah, Gerald's on.
Okay.
I heard that, yeah.
Okay, so I see. I see.
I think so.
In a future meeting, let's not lock it down. Counselor Joe, go ahead.
I mean, I know we have projects and stuff, but are we in a big hot mess at this point that we are screwed if we don't figure this out right now? I mean, is it that bad?
Right now, I have enough money to do the projects that I have in this year's budget. That's the best answer I can give you right now.
Okay. I'm just kind of nervous because it's sounding like an urgent emergency and I don't know how we got here.
We have a lot to do.
Okay.
And it's all coming really, really fast.
Okay.
That's my word.
And the longer we put it out, the more expensive it becomes.
Right. Okay, so unless I hear objection, we're going to, the staff is going to come back with an appropriate report. Probably in October. We're not going to lock it. And then we'll have a chance to look at the options, make some policy decisions. Does that sound okay with everybody? We're not deciding anything else at this point, okay? All right, because of the hour, unless, does anybody have any pressing announcement that they need to make?
Did we need to motion to postpone that?
We did it by consensus.
Oh, okay.
I would just like to say, I'd like to recognize Geraldo Rincon, who lost his life fighting fires in Idaho. He was a Central High School graduate, lived here his whole life, and his family's here, and they're part of our community, and we mourn your loss, and we're heartbroken over it.
Thank you, Counselor. I appreciate that. And I will let you know that on behalf of the council and our community, I did put a personal note to the family. And so that
And there have been some lovely community tributes
there have
too.
been. Any,
And on a much lighter note, this Saturday night is the Ghost Walk. I hope y'all can come.
somebody say the word adjourn.
Adjourn.
Thank you. We're done.